Here's your host, Kerry Crowley.
We are back. What's going on, folks? Kerry Crowley hanging out with you Monday evening. No Niners Nightly tonight. Larry Krueger was on earlier today with FP Santangelo, but we've got a fun one for you. We're going to talk a lot of Giants baseball this evening, and the Giants are making news down in the desert. Not necessarily the kind of news that you want to be making. We will talk about that all night long, allow you to sound off here. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Tony Vitello, Giants manager, opened his press conference, not press conference, but his daily session with reporters in the dugout in Scottsdale, and kind of gave an unprompted speech and spoke in detail about the unnerving hiring process with the San Francisco Giants, where news of Vitello and the Giants partnership was leaking while he was still on the field at the University of Tennessee. So instead of taking my word for it, we're going to play the entire 3-minute clip right here. Cole Appelt behind the scenes, making things work here at KNBR. He's going to play the entire Tony Vitello clip from this morning's presser or media availability, scrum, whatever you want to call it, right here. Let's go.
When did you first think I was taking this job? Do you remember that far back?
Yeah, it was about 4 days before it actually happened, 5 days before.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because that was not reality, at all. I don't know if Buster would feel the same way, but that wasn't the case. Somebody decides they think they got the information, and, the final blow was about 4 days later. And the thing I'm just kind of having a conversation, therapy, if you will, from walking out of there, but I needed confirmation from the coaches that I worked with that helped boost my status, that they were okay with what was going to go on and they were going to be okay with their jobs. That staff had always been built as like next man up, and all of a sudden that was being threatened. So it was kind of hard to do something for yourself and your teammates get left behind. But yeah, it was not 4 days for what it's worth. That was not the case at all. If you would have seen me in my condo, you would have agreed. But anyway.
Why do you ask?
Because somebody tweeted it out. I don't know who told them. I wish I did. It might have changed the course of history if I would have known who did, to be honest with you. But it just bothers me because, I don't know. You see people angry on this. I hate to get philosophical, but you see people angry on the streets for a lot of times stuff that's not even true. People arguing and you don't know what reality is. So I did, shrink-wise, I did a really damn good job at keeping that away from our team, our recruiting, and it was not a distraction. And then all of a sudden in the middle of practice, I see our first and third base coach freaking out. And they freaked out on me too. And it's for no reason, because at that point, nothing was going to happen. But somebody decided that it was going to happen, and then the whole world started spinning real quick, and I had to address the team, and people said either that or me leaving was a distraction. Those guys are SEC athletes. They ain't distracted by me. We dealt with years where they thought we might take a job, or we were offered a job, or there was jobs open. I'd meet with guys in the office. They're like, Coach, we don't care. The guys care about the guys when the season's going on, and hopefully they love their coaches, but that thing was never a distraction. They got talent, and they got good kids, so they're going to be just fine. But yeah, that was not a fun Saturday, and then it kind of affected how the next few days went. But ultimately, sorry to rain on your parade. Great organization, great people to work with, and a great challenge. So didn't say no.
So many different things to break down from this morning's media session. We will get into all of them here on Sports Phone KNBR this evening. Kerry Crowley hanging out with you until 9 o'clock. But the very first thing on my mind, after listening to Tony Vitello speak this morning about the way that this process went down, is his frustration with the reporting that was out there. He referenced a very challenging Saturday back in Knoxville, and 4 days later is when he finally accepted the job with the San Francisco Giants. And he felt like a tweet was out there that he was coming to San Francisco and that it wasn't fair to the people that he was working with. It wasn't fair to the players there in Knoxville. And I get that. I understand where he's coming. But let me be very clear. I remember that Saturday extremely well. I remember the reporting from Andrew Baggerly of The Athletic, Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, John Shea of the San Francisco Standard, and I remember what everyone had said on that Saturday morning when Tony Vitello's name was first kind of seriously discussed by media members, by fans, as the potential next manager of the San Francisco Giants. And the reporting suggested that the Giants had made Tony Vitello the target of their search. Not that Vitello had accepted the job, not that Vitello was definitely coming to San Francisco, but that the Giants were laser focused on Tony Vitello becoming the next manager of the San Francisco Giants. So whether it was someone in Vitello's circle, someone in the Giants circle, someone in Posey's front office, someone in ownership, regardless of where this report came from and how it leaked out to reporters who were in the know in Major League Baseball, and these are some very good ones who've been covering the San Francisco Giants for decades on end now. The report was not Tony Vitello is going to be the next manager of the San Francisco Giants. And that is very clearly how he interpreted this reporting. And so to me, it is hard to feel sorry for Tony and the way that this went down when we know that he could have said no. When we know that if he was extremely comfortable at Tennessee and had no major league ambitions, that he could have said thanks, but no thanks. We knew at that point on Saturday when reports came out in The Athletic and the San Francisco Standard and all the other publications around the Bay Area that the Giants had essentially made Vitello the focus of their search. We knew that it would be very difficult for Vitello to say no. Why? Because he was the head coach of the University of Tennessee Volunteers. And I mean no disrespect to the good folks of Knoxville or the good folks who watch and love SEC baseball. But there is no comparison between the University of Tennessee and the San Francisco Giants. College ball is great, but there's a reason that his name was being discussed in major league circles and why major league managers are not discussed in college circles. No NFL head coach wants to go coach at Notre Dame. No NBA head coach wants to go coach back at Duke. And no major league manager, if given the opportunity, would take the Tennessee job. The way this works is that when you are at the peak of your profession in college, when you are the Notre Dame football coach, when you are the Duke basketball coach, when you are the Tennessee baseball coach, you're thinking about bigger and better. And in those cases, bigger and better means the pros. And so I'm sorry if Tony Vitello didn't like it, but this is the territory that comes with being a part of Major League Baseball. This is the territory that comes with having success in the college ranks. This is the reality of what every single day in Major League Baseball will be like. And so if Tony doesn't like the fact that his name was being discussed, that people were suggesting that he would be the next manager of the Giants, because let's be honest, no college coach, if off a major league, to stay with their career. If he doesn't like that, then it's going to be a long tenure, however long it is. If it's 6 months, if it's 12 months, if it's 40 years that Vitello wants to spend in Major League Baseball, it is going to be a long time if he can't get used to the fact that private conversations, that private discussions, private negotiations are publicly aired. That is the nature of professional sports. Things happen at the college ranks that are not reported because there just aren't that many reporters in the college ranks. There aren't that many people who want to get to the bottom of what's going on inside the dugout at Tennessee baseball. But I'll tell you, when things fall apart in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in New York, in Boston, there will always be people willing to talk. If there's an uncomfortable situation or a conversation that doesn't sit well with a particular player, a particular coach, a particular member of the front office, that player, that coach, that front office member, they will go to a reporter and let them know what happened. The reason that we knew that Tony Vitello was the object of the Giants search is that someone wanted it out there. Whether it be someone with the University of Tennessee or someone with the San Francisco Giants, someone wanted it out there that the Giants were seriously considering hiring Tony Vitello. And so while he may not have liked the way that that went down, consider this. Consider it's May 5th of this year. And Rafael Devers is 0 for his last 20. And Rafael Devers is striking out too much. And by the way, Matt Chapman, Willie Adames, Elliot Ramos are all on hot streaks. And some of those guys are hitting 5th and 6th in the order. And Devers is sitting 4th. And Vitello has to go to Devers and say, you know what, Rafi? We need to pull you down in the order. We need to hit you 5th or 6th. We need to give the other guys an opportunity to hit in the RBI spots. If Rafael Devers doesn't like the tone of that conversation, someone from his camp, whether it be his agent, whether it be Devers himself, they will go to the media and they will say that that's happening. And before Tony Vitello can even make the proclamation that Devers is no longer the cleanup hitter for the San Francisco Giants, that will get out there. These hypothetical situations may seem far-fetched, but they become real over the course of 162 games. They become real over the course of seasons strung together. This is life in Major League Baseball. Tony Vitello ought to get used to it because it's not changing. Things that were private at Tennessee, a lifestyle that he got accustomed to, where everyone loved him no matter what, that simply won't be the case in San Francisco. Bruce Bochy, 3-time world champion, one of the most incredible managers in the modern era, one of the most celebrated managers in San Francisco Giants history. I covered his final seasons, 17, 18, 19 with the San Francisco Giants, and there were a lot of people, a lot of fans who said it was time to go. They may not say it now, they may not admit it now, but I heard it all the time on social media that it was time for Bruce Bochy to go. Even one of the most beloved managers in San Francisco Giants history had his haters. So of course someone who is 0-0, who's never managed a major league game, will have his haters. It wasn't the case at Tennessee, but college is different than the pros. Everything that happens in Major League Baseball has a spotlight on it. Everything that happens in the professional ranks, people know about, people care more about, people want to learn more about. So, I suggest Tony better get used to this because while the comforts of college are great, while the joy of being able to live a life of anonymity when you want it is really nice, that is not reality in San Francisco. That is not the reality in any of the 29 other franchises around Major League Baseball, the other places where they play in the major leagues. This is much more serious. There are many more stakeholders. This is much more high profile. And I know that SEC baseball is big time. But what happens in Knoxville will not compare to what transpires in San Francisco. And there's a reason that anyone in Tony's position would have accepted a job managing any of the 30 teams in Major League Baseball, because pro baseball is different. The stakes are different. The glory is bigger. The game itself is bigger. I'm Kerry Crowley. The show is Sports Phone KNBR. No Niners Nightly this evening, but we're getting an early start here on KNBR. When we come back, your phone calls, 415-808-KNBR. Please do dial in your thoughts on Tony Vitello and his continued conversations about his hiring process transpiring down at spring training with reporters covering the San Francisco Giants right here on The Sports Leader.
Giants fans, this is your hub to have your voice heard. Sports Phone KNBR. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
We are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley hanging out with you. We got an early start this evening. No Niners nightly, but we'll talk Niners in the 7 o'clock hour tonight. Larry Krueger off this evening. He was on the air earlier this afternoon with FP Santangelo before we aired a Duke basketball game. I guess we do things differently here on President's Day. A lot of folks taking the day off, and deservedly so. But appreciate those of you tuning in this evening, those of you still commuting. Fun to chat Giants baseball, even if the topic is not necessarily what we anticipated heading into the day. I thought we might be talking about the Giants lineup, how the Giants are going to line up their rotation, different bullpen options. By the way, Yoel Peguero, who I kind of consider one of the front runners for a late inning role, he's sidelined right now with a hamstring issue, so not an ideal start to camp for the San Francisco Giants. But nevertheless, full squad has reported. They did so on Sunday. Tony Vitello checking in on players and getting going ahead of the first Cactus League game this Saturday. The Giants, KNBR, we will have our final Hot Stove League show of the offseason on Wednesday of this week. Anticipating getting our guest list for that show tomorrow. But 7 to 8 o'clock on Wednesday night, it will be the 12th and final Hot Stove show that we've done this offseason to prepare you for Cactus League play and the Giants season coming up. So obviously earlier today, Tony Vitello made a ton of news down in Scottsdale with a pretty detailed speech, or recollection, I should say, of how the process with which his name came up and rumors and speculation around the San Francisco Giants, how that all unfolded back when he was the head coach at Tennessee and just trying to navigate fall ball. And discussed in our opening segment tonight how I think Tony's got a real adjustment period here. He's got to get used to the fact that anything that he says behind closed doors could, and in all likelihood will, get out. There are just too many people with too many different competing ideologies, philosophies, mindsets, stakes, where when you say something in Major League Baseball, it typically does not stay behind closed doors for long. And so that point is aside, there's something else that struck me about Tony's speech this morning, his recollection of his ultimately accepting the job with the San Francisco Giants. And that is the fact that more than a week into this thing, more than a week down in Scottsdale with Giants players and coaches and taking the field and running his first full pro spring training, his first Cactus League game on the horizon on Saturday, he's still drawing a lot of comparisons to his days at the University of Tennessee. And I know that that is all he has to go off of. I know that for the last 20 plus years, he has only coached in the college ranks. That it was Missouri, it was Texas Christian, it was Arkansas, it was Tennessee. He can't talk about stories from coaching in the Yankees farm system or being a manager in the Twins AA affiliate. That's not the experience that Tony Vitello has. But nevertheless, at some point, you would like him to ditch the stories about the University of Tennessee. You would like him to ditch the past and focus on the here and now. And I get that's extremely difficult for someone who doesn't have 20 years of memories in Major League Baseball, in pro baseball, in player development, inside of a farm system. It's just different for someone who didn't play or coach or manage the game at the highest level before Buster Posey hired him back in October and brought him to San Francisco. But I think a lot of what I hear, and Tony admitted this during his interview with Murph and Marcus on Friday. By the way, we'll be down in the desert tomorrow, opening the morning show with Giants players and coaches, some great guests with Murph and Marcus. He has said, look, at some point I've got to turn the page. At some point I've got to start focusing on the team in front of me. And hopefully these Cactus League games that are coming up, starting on Saturday, hopefully that is the call. Because if he goes into Cactus League play, and if he's over managing, if he's too intense, those are problems that I think Buster Posey, Zach Manassian, the Giants players in the front office, they will live with. If he is too interested in what's happening down in Arizona, if he's too invested in the outcomes of at-bats that ultimately don't matter that much. That's a good thing. You know that he'll be locked in. You know that he'll be ready to go. You know that, this is a guy who lives and breathes baseball. But right now, it seems there's still this attachment to the University of Tennessee that I think is a little uncomfortable for folks, probably both with the Giants and certainly fans who are following this team right now down at spring training, trying to pick up on whatever sense they can of whether or not this team has any shot this year, because that's really what it's about. This team must right the wrongs of previous iterations of the San Francisco Giants. 4 consecutive years without a playoff berth. And Logan Webb, the longest tenure member of this franchise, and the ace of this staff, he spoke in detail to John Shea, the San Francisco Standard, this weekend with a great story that John put out about how frustrating it is to continue to finish around 500 and how he wants the next era of Giants baseball to be defined by playoff success. How, yeah, sure, he's put up great numbers in each of the last 4 seasons. He's finished top 6 in Cy Young voting each of the last 3 seasons, but that doesn't really matter to Webb at the moment. What matters to him is getting back to the feeling that he had back in 2021 when he was pitching game 162, when he pitched game 1 of the NLDS, when the Giants moved him ahead of Kevin Gossman in their rotation because they knew there was no denying the fact that Webb was their best pitcher at that point, no matter how well Gossman threw the ball during the second half of that season. They had him pitch game 5, and he did an incredible job against the Dodgers, that pressure-packed evening when Camilo Doval gave it up to Cody Bellinger in the 9th inning at Oracle Park. It's been way too long since the Giants have had stakes that high, have had a pitcher under that kind of pressure, have had hitters taking the types of at-bats that Wilmer Flores took when he was called out on the check swing over at first base. It's been way too long. 22, 23, 24, 25. The Giants have been mediocre. And so all of this talk about Tennessee, all of this talk about Tony Vitello and the college ranks, it will all disappear if this team comes out of the gates and performs really well. If Logan Webb and Rafael Devers, Matt Chapman, and Willie Adames lead this team to a place where Buster Posey, Zach Manassian, and now Tony Vitello think that it can be. But if the Giants don't perform well out of the gates, if Tony continues to slip in April and May and draws on experiences at the college level at Tennessee and compares the Giants to those teams, it's going to be tough. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Let's go to Mike in Sacramento. Mike in Sacramento, you're on Sports Phone. Mike, how's it going this evening?
Hi, Terry. Good to talk to you again. Listen, I just wanted to make a quick hit here with, I agree 100% with what you're talking about with Tony Vitello. I have some trepidation because this guy he might be a great college guy, but this is another level, a complete another level. He's going to go from 30 games to 200 games by the time you count spring training. And the people that he's dealing with, they're not college kids. They're pros. They have different egos, different mindsets. And this stuff, talking about college, isn't going to work anymore. He's going to have a hard time convincing a pro guy who's making that kind of money and who's been in the league and has seen success and taking him out of the lineup or moving him down or getting him to buy into anything, because they're going to say, what qualifications do you have? How do you know the pro game? How do you know what I'm about? I think it's going to be difficult. I think he's going to find out really quick that he's going to have really thick skin. He's going to have to learn a lot really quick. And honestly, I do have some trepidations about it. And that's pretty much what I wanted to say.
Well, I appreciate the phone call, and you were exactly right, Mike. Thick skin is going to be so important in all of this. You know what the other component to this is going to be really important? That is his assistant coaches. Like Buster Posey, Zach Manassian, Tony himself did the new manager a huge favor in the coaching staff that they assembled. Jace Tingler, not only a close friend of Tony Vitello, but someone who managed in a pressure-packed situation in San Diego, someone who was under intense scrutiny in San Diego. Jace can tell Tony what this is like. He has experience having difficult conversations with star caliber players, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., and that didn't always go according to plan for Jace Tingler down in San Diego. Remember, he had the high-profile kind of blow-up with Fernando Tatis Jr., who was swinging away in a 3-0 situation, and Jace didn't have his back. But there was a lesson learned there And I think that Tony's ability to lean on his staff, whether it be Jace, whether it be Ron Washington, whether it be the advisors who show up over the course of the season in Dusty Baker, that is ultimately going to be what leads the Giants' new manager to getting comfortable at the major league level. He has to be able to tune out some noise. He has to be able to put a day like today, a day where everyone is talking about him and not the team because of what he said and not what the team did, behind him. So if he comes out tomorrow and he meets with reporters and he just goes about his business, he moves on, he doesn't answer any questions related to what happened today, I'll take that as a win for the new manager. But if he comes out and says, maybe I was misunderstood, if he starts with a speech and not by answering a question in the dugout down in Scottsdale tomorrow, I don't know that there will be a lesson learned there. I think that he's just got to accept the reality that everything in Major League Baseball is under the spotlight. Everything merits scrutiny. Let's go to John in South City. John in South City, you're on Sports Phone. John, how's it going this evening?
Hey, what's up, Kerry? How's it going, man?
Oh, going well on my end. Great to hear your voice. What's going on?
Hey, well, I'm doing pretty well, man. Hey, I want to talk about the outfield roster depth. It looks like our starting will be Bader B center, Lee will be in right field, and Ramos will be in left. Now, the big concern is about Luis Matos. We have given so many opportunities. I don't know if he's out of option this year, Kerry. I need help on that one.
Yeah, he is out of options, and quite honestly, unless he hits about 350 during spring training, I don't see Matos making this team, John.
Yeah, I mean, he's come clutch for us, but it's just too close to call. And I know they just signed another outfielder from Cleveland yesterday.
Yeah, Will Brennan yesterday. Will Brennan joins the club.
So, do we see him calling? What does he do? Do you think he will come off the bench as a pitch hitter, or he comes in for defense? How do you think of him as well, Kerry?
It's an interesting question because I have just focused so far on the addition of Harrison Bader and thinking about the outfield with Ramos in left, Jung-Hoo Lee in right, and is that good enough? I really don't pay that much attention at the beginning of the season to the depth because I think that these things tend to work themselves out during the course of spring training. Like if Matos hits 350, he's probably going to be on the ball club, and he'll probably be the fourth outfielder. If Drew Gilbert hits 350, he'll probably be the fifth outfielder and providing depth behind Bader in center and Jung-Hoo Lee in right. There's a path for Gerard Encarnacion to make this roster. He's out of options. I think Will Brennan was brought in with the expectation, John, that one of these guys, in Matos or Encarnacion, who's out of options, they probably won't make the team. And so if that's the case, you need to have that second layer of depth. And Will Brennan can be that guy. He's got an option available to him. The Giants can have him start the season at AAA Sacramento, and this allows them to kind of maximize their depth. So let's say they want to keep three catchers on opening day. Eric Haas be the backup to Patrick Bailey, but Daniel Susac is a Rule 5 draft pick. If you only go with four outfielders, say you cut Matos, you keep Encarnacion, you option Gilbert, then you're able to keep three catchers on your Major League roster. So to me, the Brennan edition was all about optionality and preparing for the reality that you're not going to have both Matos and Encarnacion on your opening day outfield roster.
Right. And another thing for closer, do we know who will be the closer this year for the Giants yet, or is it just too early to call right now between Walker?
I mean, Ryan Walker wants the job. Ryan Walker's got to go earn the job, and the Giants didn't do enough in terms of bolstering their bullpen to really provide him with challengers in spring training. Like if Ryan Walker pitches to a 3 ERA in spring training, that's going to be good enough. And I kind of wish the Giants had 3 or 4 guys competing for this role and that Walker would have to have a near flawless spring. But the reality is there are too many guys who lack high leverage experience, high leverage innings to really pencil anyone in. So John, I'll say this. I think Walker opens the season as the closer. I don't know that he finishes the season. I think we're in for a surprise on that front.
Sounds very interesting, Kerry. And then one more thing. Do we know who's going to be the backup for Bailey's catcher role? It's just too early to call right now.
Yeah, it's too early to call. I mean, Eric Haas is the veteran. He was brought in, former Detroit Tigers guy, but he's on a minor league contract. So they might be able to stash him in AAA at the beginning of the season. Daniel Susac is in camp as a Rule 5 draft pick. So if he gets cut, he's out of the organization altogether. There's incentive for the Giants to keep Daniel Susac around. I think he will be treated as the favorite in camp. And unless he hits like 150 and just looks totally lost at the plate, it's probably Daniel Susac. But if he's middling, if he's hitting 220 and the Giants see a path to keeping him, that's the way that they could keep both Haas and Susac on this opening day roster and kind of have one of those guys battle it out in the month of April to ultimately be the backup to Patrick Bailey.
Well, we always don't forget Forever Giant Andrew Susac as well too, Kerry. We can't forget.
Yeah, Forever Giant, a good call there, John. Thank you so much for the call. I appreciate your thoughts, your questions, good stuff. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Let's take one more before we go to commercial break here. Let's go to Bruce in Palo Alto. Bruce in Palo Alto, you're on Sports Phone. Bruce, what's going on this evening?
Hey, Kerry, I told your screen I want to talk about Max Scherzer, and I do just a couple of very brief notes on what you just talked about. Fill me in. Does McRae, who I think is the speediest Giant and the best defensive outfielder, strikes out a lot as we know, is he out of options or does he have options?
As far as I know, he's got one more season with minor league options available, so I think that the Giants will keep him on the 40-man.
Good. Okay, that's great to know. And as far as the catching, real quickly before I talk about Max, of course, what they can do is stash Hasse. I think you mentioned that in the minors on a minor league contract. If Susac really looks to be a good receiver and can hit, but they can also make a trade with, I guess it's the A's, rather than return, and that happens periodically. Where
you're right.
Send him down and trade a player. But let's talk about Max. That's the big thing. I heard you mention, I'm trying to think where it was on KNBR just in the last day or so. I guess I've heard it on a podcast, that you're thinking Birdsong maybe as an option for the bullpen. And I understand why. Mm-hmm. I mean, everything you said makes sense. I think you also said, like, I feel he's a young arm and you'd rather see him stretched out in case somebody goes down, or stretched out and just see if he can work on that third pitch and have command. But what about signing Max Scherzer with the understanding with Max of the following thing? If he himself feels that it makes the most sense for his career and durability and to give the Giants and he the best shot this year to potentially close, if it looks in spring training that, getting past 4 innings, kind of like the early days of Verlander last season, if you remember, he struggled getting past 4 and then he built himself up. What do you think about the possibility of seeing if you can be convinced to come on and be flexible to go either way? Do you think he'd have an open mind? The Giants would have an open mind.
I mean, I personally love this. I think it's great. I think that, you leverage the relationship that he has with Tony Vitello, understanding that these two are friends dating back to the University of Missouri. I also think that it would be a big assumption for the Giants to think that Scherzer would be willing to come out of the bullpen. There's no reason not to check, right? Like, you have to make the call. You have to check. The other thing that I would say, and this is, if you've been listening, this is my one real big issue with the Giants bullpen. They don't get enough swings and misses. And in each of the last 2 seasons, Scherzer's strikeout per 9 innings rate has plummeted under 9. He used to be the best in baseball. I mean, 2019 with the Nationals, he was striking out 12.7 per 9 innings. That was the best in the major leagues at that point. But for the last 2 years, it's been more like 8.5 per 9. I see guys in the bullpen 11 Ks per 9. And so maybe Scherzer is savvy enough to dial it back and change the way that he throws coming out of the bullpen. Maybe he could do that. But this is just so hypothetical that it's hard for me to even envision,
Well, then I guess I'll close with this, that, it's a very good point. I would still look to sign him as the veteran to help, the young guys can learn from him as they did from Verlander. He certainly, to me, I have a lot more confidence in him than, for example, Hauser. I like Molly, but can he stay healthy? Hauser throws too soft for me. I'm not going to base my decision on him because he pitched so well against the Giants last year twice. A lot of teams did, let's face it. And his overall in his career, he hasn't been that great. So if you ask me who would I'd rather see in my rotation, Scherzer or Molly, there's no decision. I'd look at Molly as being maybe my long guy. And if I were the Giants, lastly, because I agree with you 100% about wanting that K in the 9th inning, I'm looking at the guy behind the guy, meaning I think it was in San Diego a couple of years ago that they had a guy that threw 95, 100 behind Suarez or whatever. And I'm thinking in Arizona, they had the guy Rodriguez who was going to take over last year from the closer they had, I think, Sewald, but he got hurt, unfortunately. So I'm trying to find that guy in Major League Baseball who doesn't have the closer role right now, but would step in if the closer got hurt. That's the guy I try to trade for.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%, Bruce. Great phone call. Just tremendous stuff. Really agree with you. I hope to hear from Bruce throughout the course of this baseball season. I saw this idea today. The Pittsburgh Pirates are still looking for an infielder. Apparently, Casey Schmidt, if you get to the end of spring training, that could be an option in a trade. So, what Bruce just said, look at that Pirates bullpen. Look at someone who's throwing the 7th or the 8th right now. That could be the player the Giants ultimately trade for and say, hey, we need another reliever. We have an infielder who's expendable, assuming everyone gets through spring training healthy. And the Giants, that will be a challenge for all of the veteran guys that they have. Maybe that's the last minute deal that they make come March 22nd, March 23rd, sending out one of their infielders for a late inning reliever who can be the guy in front of the guy, as Bruce just told us. Really good analysis and assessment of where the Giants pitching staff is right now. I'm Kerry Crowley. The show is Sports Phone KNBR. No Niners Nightly this evening here in the 6 o'clock hour, but we are rolling with you all the way until 9 right here on KNBR 104.5, 680, the sports leader.
Once upon a time, there lived 3 energy hogs. Now, an energy hog is what you have when humans waste energy. One day, the 3 energy hogs set out to find themselves a cottage.
Let's look for leaky windows,
Said the first energy hog, for he knew that would waste energy.
Let's look for leaky doors,
Said the second.
Let's look for a swing set,
Said the third, for he had more blubber than brains. So they set off down the road. Presently, they came upon a tiny cottage where dwelled a clever girl named Dreadylocks.
I hope it has leaky windows,
Cried the first energy hog.
I hope it has leaky doors,
Cried the second.
I hope it has a bathroom.
Cried the third, for only his brains were smaller than his bladder. But Dreadylocks liked playing cool games at energyhog.org. And from energyhog.org, she learned how to use energy wisely. So the 3 energy hogs were forced to look elsewhere to waste energy and had to use the disgusting restroom at the gas station down the road. And the moral of the story is, to use energy wisely, log on to energyhog.org or waste not, hog not.
This public service message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Giants fans, this is your hub to have your voice heard. Sports Phone KNBR. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
We are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Good line of callers. Cole LaPelt, who's working the board here at KNBR this evening, even hopped on during the break and said, yo, these guys know ball. 415-808-KNBR is the number. If you want to chime in on your thoughts on Tony Vitello, the new manager of the San Francisco Giants, the roster construction for Buster Posey's team, and whatnot, I would love to hear from you this evening. We've got open phone lines for the next 45 minutes or so, and nothing but time to talk Giants baseball. Warriors in the midst of the All-Star break right now. They're not back in action until they host the Celtics on Thursday. 49ers won't be making news until the NFL Combine next week in Indianapolis. I believe John Lynch is slated to speak on Tuesday or Wednesday. But regardless, it's kind of a dead week around the Bay Area sports landscape, and it's one where historically they've always pulled me into host here at KNBR. I don't take up many time slots, but presents, I think I've been booked the last 8 years solid. Good time for vacations. I know that either Copes or Depop is getting out of town this week. We've got a good lineup of guest hosts this in the afternoons. Murph and Marcus headed down to Scottsdale. They're going to do player interviews, coach interviews down there in the desert, so that should be fun as well. But nevertheless, I want to talk about these San Francisco Giants because our last caller, Bruce, brought up a really good point. And a few people have asked about this in recent weeks. What does the back end of the San Francisco Giants bullpen look like right now? I think we all see Ryan Walker, and we all see someone who has at least experience in the ninth inning, albeit it was up and down last year when the Giants also had Camilo Doval, also had Randy Rodriguez pitching in spurts in the ninth inning. But Walker only has 28 career saves, 17 of which came last season. And yet he's being trusted as, quote unquote, the guy going into spring training because the Giants just don't really have any other options down there. But they do have an intriguing number of pitchers who I think could develop into important bullpen pieces. I still think the Achilles heel of this bullpen is it doesn't miss enough bats. A number of the pitchers that I'm about to mention and list out, they really need to improve their strikeout totals. They need to improve their whiff rate. They need to get more swings and misses. That is the issue for these San Francisco Giants. But you look down at the bullpen and you can squint and see a group that might be middle of the road this year. Of course, you want to shoot for best in baseball. You want to shoot for top 3, top 5, but the Giants just didn't address the bullpen. Buster Posey has signed 7 major league free agents this offseason, if you count Will Brennan's addition on Sunday. And 2 of them were in the bullpen, neither of whom project to be regular late inning guys. Sam Hentges joins, former Cleveland Guardian, and Jason Foley, who opens the season on the 60-day injured list, he also joins, former Tigers closer, but coming off major shoulder surgery, probably not going to step right back into a late inning role. So who are the other options that Tony Vitello has at his disposal? If you're thinking about someone who can take down valuable 8th and 9th inning high leverage situations, lefty Eric Miller is probably at the top of my list. Like if you've got a tough pocket of left-handers, if you're up in the late innings against the Dodgers and it's Ohtani and it's Freeman due up, Eric Miller's got to be your guy. And yes, he walked way too many guys last season. Yes, he still didn't strike out enough, but the ERA was low and the velocity is high. And that combination to me suggests that Eric Miller can be a trusted 7th, 8th, or 9th inning guy for the San Francisco Giants. You throw 98 from the left side, generally speaking, if you can locate, things are going to work out for you. So that's just something to keep in mind for the San Francisco Giants. But outside of Walker and outside of Miller, here are the options essentially at Tony Vitello's disposal. Tristan Beck, journeyman reliever who's been back and forth from AAA to the bigs. Hayden Birdsong, who the Giants will probably stretch out as a starter, but might profile best as a bullpen guy. Spencer Bivens, who in his career has been more of a 6th inning guy than an 8th or a 9th. JT Brubaker, former starter. I, quite frankly, was surprised to see him on the 40-man roster when I looked. Jose Butto, acquired in that Mets deal last year with Tyler Rogers, more of a 6th or 7th inning guy. Again, doesn't generate enough swings and misses. Matt Gage, Joined the Giants last season, had a nice stretch for this ball club. But again, you're talking about someone who tops out really 92, 94 with the fastball. Sam Hentges doesn't have that high leverage experience with the Cleveland Guardians, even though he does have low ERAs in his past. Trevor McDonald, someone to be stretched out as a starting pitcher during spring training in all likelihood, but again, could find his way back to the bullpen. Yoel Peguero, I think he is the number one guy who I look at and say, ninth inning stuff, or eighth inning stuff at the very least. But Peguero, who throws 100 and made his major league debut last season with the Giants, he's dealing with a hamstring issue. And typically when that happens for pitchers, they say, oh, he's not going to throw for a few days. And then it's, oh, he didn't throw for a week. And then, oh, he's not going to be ready to go by opening day. These things just linger. It's not to say it's definitely going to happen with Peguero, but you don't want to start Monday, February 16th with a hamstring issue when the season's 5 weeks away on Wednesday, March 25th. Other pitchers, Reiver Sanmartin. It's been up and down. Former Cincinnati Red waiver claim this offseason, stuck with the Giants on the 40-man throughout the winter as they made a ton of moves. So that tells me the Giants want him in their bullpen. But again, does he get enough swings and misses? As a former waiver claim, is he really going to be a high leverage guy? Carson Seymour, good fastball, but that fastball gets hit over the fence way too often. Blade Tidwell may be stretched out as a starter, but there is a path for Tidwell to becoming a late inning reliever. I see that. Carson Wisenhunt probably stretched out as a starter, but if things don't work out, I could envision a world where Wisenhunt is a seventh inning fastball changeup guy. The fastball's got to tick up a little bit more, probably more like 95, 96 as opposed to 94, 95. And that changeup can be lethal, but guys will be sitting on it in the eighth inning. And then Keaton Winn, the ultimate wild card. This guy's good enough to be an eighth or a ninth inning reliever and has had so many injury issues through his Giants career that it wouldn't shock me at all if he found himself on the IL or off the roster altogether. So, if you're the San Francisco Giants, where do you go? Where do you go in the bullpen? Let's say for a moment that all of the pitchers who I just mentioned as projected starters, as guys who will get stretched out during spring training and who could go to AAA to open the season, are just treated as relievers. That's Hayden Birdsong. That's Trevor McDonald. That's Carson Seymour, Blade Tidwell, Keaton Winn, Carson Wisenhunt. If you treat all of those guys as relievers and not as starting depth for you, I think there is very much a world in which Hayden Birdsong is a closer for the San Francisco Giants. The fastball can ramp up 98, 99. The kick change can be devastating. If you throw one of those two off-speed pitches that you have, the curveball or the slider, if you consistently throw one of those for strikes, you can be a legit major league closer. Now, Birdsong, in an ideal world for the Giants, is so good during spring training that Adrian Hauser is sent to the bullpen. That they say, the guy that we spent $22 million on in free agency, he's got to go to the bullpen because Birdsong is undeniable. That probably won't happen for a guy who couldn't throw strikes during the second half of last season. Look down the list. Other pitchers who could factor into the equation. Blade Tidwell. This is someone who pitched under Tony Vitello at the University of Tennessee and someone who made his major league debut last year with the New York Mets. Tidwell is kind of the no one knows him, but soon enough everyone will pitcher for the San Francisco Giants. He is being billed as a starting pitcher. They acquired him as a starting pitcher, but I am telling you, he had 24 strikeouts in 18 innings after joining the Giants organization following the trade last year. He can ramp the fastball up to high 90s. That good break with those breaking balls. I think Blade Tidwell is absolutely a candidate for a seventh or eighth inning job at some point this season. Like if it doesn't work for him coming out of the rotation during spring training, send Tidwell to the bullpen. Don't think twice about it. This is not someone who you used a second round draft pick on, who you need to pan out as a starting pitcher, like Carson Wisenhunt. This is someone who the New York Mets used a second round draft pick on, who you traded Tyler Rogers for, and you should view as a lottery pick. A lottery ticket, I should say. Sorry, blending stuff with the NBA and the Warriors coverage is to come later on this evening here on SportsVote. I think both Tidwell and Birdsong possess the late inning stuff required to get strikeouts. And when you consider this Giants infield, yes, Matt Chapman's a Gold Glover over at third base, but at shortstop, can we realistically think that Willie Adames will be above average defensively this year? Can you realistically think that Luis Ariz will be above average at second base? Can you peg Rafael Devers for great club work over at first base? Probably not. And so if you go into the late innings and you've got those three guys out on the field, Adames at short, Ariz at second, Devers over at first, and you're preserving a 1 or a 2-run lead, you don't need guys who can get ground balls, because oftentimes those ground balls are going to get through the hole, or the infielders aren't going to be able to get to them. The slow chopper, Ariz isn't going to have the foot speed to get there, cut it off, make a throw over to Devers at first base. What you need is high strikeout pitchers in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, what the Giants don't have nearly enough of on their current bullpen depth chart that includes Ryan Walker and Eric Miller and Yoel Peguero and Jose Butto and Tristan Beck. They don't have nearly enough of the guys who can generate whiffs consistently. It's why I say, if it doesn't work for Birdsong, if it doesn't work for Tidwell, don't open the season by sending these guys to AAA. Open the season by having them go 1-2 innings at a time out of your major league bullpen, figuring out truly what you have and seeing if either of them can be solutions for a problem area of this Giants team. 415-808 KNBR is the number. I am Kerry Crowley, your host this evening, rolling all the way until 9 o'clock. If you've got thoughts on the state of the San Francisco Giants, sign up their bullpen. I would love to hear from you this evening. On the other side, we're going to play some Tony Vitello, but not from this morning. Tony Vitello on Friday morning with Murph and Marcus. He had an in-depth conversation with the morning show hosts, kind of revealed sides to him that I think are important for every Giants fan to understand. Obviously, Tony was in the news all day long, and for good reason. He opened his media availability down in the dugout in Scottsdale with a bizarre scrum in which he was reliving a memory from 4 months ago that was, yes, deeply personal to him, but distracted from the task at hand, which is the ball club. In the college ranks, the stars are often the head coaches. In the professional ranks, in the major leagues, the stars are playing on the field. Buster Posey, one of the best players to ever come through this Giants organization, one of the most important figures in this franchise's history, dating back to 1883, the days of the New York Gothams. He is now a front office executive, and he knows better than anyone that what Matt Chapman, what Willie Adames, what Rafael Devers do, that's going to be more important than what he says or does this year. The roster that he's assembled, it's all about the guys who are on the field. Yes, Buster was a great player, but he knows better than anyone. It takes great players continuing to produce for you. 415-808 KNBR is the number. Let's go to Chris in San Francisco. Chris in San Francisco, you're on Sports Phone. Chris, what's going on this evening?
Hey, Kerry. How are you?
Doing well on my end. What's on your mind?
Well, I was pretty skeptical about the hiring at first, and just, and of course I trust Buster and everything, but it just seemed odd, his lack of experience. And, everyone's talking about how eccentric he is and what an interesting personality, on and on, like they were we're hiring like a poet or something, or I don't know, something other than a manager, just like, what a cool guy is and all that stuff, which, he always just, on podcasts and this and that, which for me, I don't want a manager who's on podcasts. I mean, at all, but whatever. So I'm excited about the season, I guess, and not much has happened, and then I'm on Twitter this morning and I see this press conference and I blew my mind, honestly. It was bizarre. It was the oddest thing. He was lecturing. There's Susan Slusser to his left. He's like basically trying to crack, how did this get out? He says the most odd thing in the middle. He says, who knows how this would have turned out had it not gotten leaked? Like, is he saying maybe he wouldn't have come to the Giants? Maybe he would have stayed? It almost sounded, Kerry, like he was saying that he was forced to come because it had come out. And then, talking about, they can handle it. They're SEC players. I have no problem with them handling this. Like, no one asked him. He's like, and then he uses we. all the time in terms of like other jobs he's offered. We've been offered other jobs, which is that nonsense, weird, I don't know, podcast talk. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It was so fake. It was so, he seemed so thin-skinned. His beard is trimmed. I mean, he's Kapler without the major league experience, it seemed to me. Kapler at least played in the league for, 10 years? I mean, he has this beautifully trimmed beard, which I don't like. The whole thing was so upsetting to me. And it's like, oh my God, I was dreading the season. Why can't, let's just get. So I was not happy about it. I don't even want to, I didn't like watching Kapler in the dugout, especially when he got the tattoo on his hand, which really bothered me.
I think, personal appearances aside, I think we focus on what people are saying, what people are doing. You can take the appearance stuff out of the equation, Chris. I understand why it doesn't sit right with you. I understand because he's focused on the past and he's got this job that so many people would love to have. He's the manager of the San Francisco Giants. He's leading one of the most storied organizations in all of baseball, and he's talking about Tennessee. And I understand that's his life experience. He comes from 20 years of college baseball. I understand that to a degree. But you've got Rafael Devers, Matt Chapman, Willie Adames, Luis Ariz on your infield. Don't you want to start by saying, like, man, this is different for me? Man, this is cool managing these all-stars, having high-level conversations about the game of baseball. Tell us what you're learning from them. Tell us how you plan to use this staff that you've hired to coach them. Use these opportunities when you're sitting with media members to look forward, to project into the future, to discuss what changes you plan to implement in Major League Baseball. Don't look back on the past, right?
Yes, I totally agree with you. Yes, it was so ill-advised with his first impression like that. And yes, I would have loved for him to, not only loved, I would have expected him. I mean, that's what anyone would have done. That's what made it so odd. Here's this great opportunity. I can't believe I'm around these guys. All this stuff. This is but dealing with these 4 days that are like, deep in his feelings in front of the, Bags and Susan Slusser, who's just like, I saw her expression. I was interested in seeing her expression. I even watched Marty Lurie's video because I got a better angle at her expression. And it was so peculiar, Kerry. I'm telling you, we'll see, but I'm with you on this.
Yeah. And look, he can correct this. He can move on. If this is not a story tomorrow, then he's figured it out. But he just has to make sure this does not continue. Chris, thank you for the phone call. I appreciate you. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Let's go to Dennis in San Jose. Dennis in San Jose, you're on Sports Phone. Dennis, what's going on this evening?
Everything's good, but I'm a Giants fan, but I got to tell you right now, our infield's good, our outfield's good. It's got working some things, but they're good. But we're not going to do good unless we get two good starters, pitchers that can go 7 innings, and we don't have it right now. But we've got to address that because there's nobody in our team that can do that right now. They've done this for the last 3 years, and they haven't had a good starter outside of Rep. And we need the guys to go 7 innings. Otherwise, we're not going to do good.
Yep. No, I appreciate the phone call, Dennis. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Here's the thing. If you look around Major League Baseball, you make 30, 32 starts a year. What does that look like for the average Major League starter? 32 starts by 7 innings would be 224 innings. You're not getting that. No one in Major League Baseball is going more than 200 innings outside of Logan Webb. The new standard is 6. And quite frankly, for mid to back end of the rotation guys, it's 5. And it's not even 30 starts. You want them to go 20 to 25 starts and hold up. It's the modern era. It's the new game. It's the new reality. But the vast majority of teams around Major League Baseball have one guy who's going to give them 180 innings. So I understand the criticism, but it's a criticism that doesn't hold up in 2026. Like, I wish that every starter went 200 innings. I wish the Giants could have 5 guys who did it, and I wish that all 30 teams could have 5 guys who did it because it's more fun as a fan when starting pitchers go deep into games. But that's not the reality. I don't fault Buster Posey for going out and signing Tyler Mahle, who had a 2.18 ERA last year. Right? I don't love the signing of Adrian Hauser, but I also don't have access to the analytics that the Giants do. They may believe that Adrian Hauser has turned a corner and he can be the pitcher he was against the Giants last year a lot this season. But to say that the Giants need more guys who go 7 innings, there's no one in Major League Baseball averaging 7 innings. There really isn't. 415-808-KNBR is the number. More phone calls when we come back. You're listening. KNBR, the sports leader.
Giants fans, this is your hub to have your voice heard. Sports Phone KNBR. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
We are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley rolling with you until 9 o'clock this evening. Open the show a little bit early tonight. No Niners Nightly on the holiday weekend. Larry Krueger getting a well-deserved promotion to the afternoon slot. He was on earlier today, I believe, with FP Santangelo. But Niners Nightly will be back tomorrow night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, all ahead of the NFL Combine next week. So this evening on Sports Phone, we've dove into the San Francisco Giants, what Tony Vitello said earlier today down in Scottsdale. And we've also got some thoughts from Tony Vitello and what he said last week on Murph and Marcus. And he will in all likelihood have another conversation with the guys during their visit to Scottsdale this week. They'll be setting up shop in the Scottsdale Stadium suite, preparing to bring you the voices and the sounds of spring training from the desert. But first, we want to head out to the phone lines. 415-808-KNBR is the number. Let's go to Mitch in New Jersey. Mitch in New Jersey, you're on Sports Phone. Mitch, what's going on this evening?
How's it going, Kerry? Thanks for taking my call. Happy opening. Spring training is finally here.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So what's on your mind tonight?
All the snow. Yeah, I know they pick up that second baseman. You think they can bring another outfielder and have the first baseman? He's going to be given a chance to play a lot. First base, name escapes me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the phone call, Mitch. Thanks for the thoughts. Just real quick, Luis Ariz, the new second baseman, think he's going to play a ton. Think that the Giants are all in on Ariz at second base. Ron Washington, the infield coach, talking Ariz up to multiple reporters. He thinks he can help with Ariz's agility. There's a lot of folks saying that Ariz is in really good shape down in Scottsdale. That's been encouraging to see. I don't think the Giants are looking at another outfielder. They brought in Will Brennan on Sunday, and furthermore, the outfield set. You got Elliot Ramos in left, Harrison Bader in center, Jung Hoo Lee in right. The backup jobs are a big competition right now. Don't see what they're doing there. And I'm sure that Mitch was asking about Bryce Eldridge, and I am sure that he will get every opportunity to win a job during spring training. But we'll see. We will see. I think Eldridge has to earn it. He's 21 years old. The Giants can absolutely move forward with Eldridge opening the season at AAA Sacramento. They can go with an infield that features Casey Schmidt at second base and Luis Ariz as the DH, or Casey Schmidt over at first base and Rafael Devers as the DH. They don't have to have Bryce Eldridge on the opening day roster, which is the type of situation that I have been begging the Giants to create for the last several years. Think about this. Anytime in the last 7-8 seasons, a Giants prospect has reached AAA Sacramento and has even put up remotely decent numbers, fans have started to clamor for that player to come up to the big league level. Not necessarily because that player has deserved it, not necessarily because that player represents the next great hope for the San Francisco Giants, but because the major league roster has been so mediocre that fans figure anyone at AAA Sacramento would be a better option. Think about Casey Schmidt himself. When he came up, the Giants were starved for infield help. Didn't matter if he was going to play third, short, second, whatever. The Giants just needed another infielder. And Schmidt couldn't be that guy right away. Think about Marco Luciano a couple of years ago. Coming up at the 2023 trade deadline to play shortstop. He wasn't ready. He wasn't remotely close to being ready. But he was good enough in AAA that fans demanded he come up to the big league level, and the front office had no reason to keep him down. Go back to 2020. Buster Posey opts out, and understandably so, to protect his family. Joey Barton hadn't had a rep above high A. And the Giants essentially have to put him on the Major League roster for that 2020 season. And to me, it messed up his development. I was of the belief that they had to put him on there because they did not have an adequate backup with either Tyler Heineman or Rob Brantley. Think about some of these pitchers on the 40-man roster. I mean, Hayden Birdsong came up ahead of schedule. Kyle Harrison a couple of years ago, now in the Milwaukee Brewers organization, by way of the Boston Red Sox, ahead of schedule. You look at Carson Wisenhunt last year. Carson Wisenhunt wasn't dominating AAA Sacramento when the Giants called him up to the big league level. He was merely fine. But merely fine at AAA Sacramento has earned you a one-way ticket down I-80, across the Bay Bridge, and inside Oracle Park. Because if you're merely fine at AAA, you will merely be fine on the big league roster. The Giants have desperately needed to create a sense of competition, and they finally have for Bryce Eldridge. This is a good thing. This is a great thing. In fact, the best possible development for the San Francisco Giants will be for Eldridge to hit 300 down in the desert, for him to mash a couple of home runs in spring training, and for Casey Schmidt, for Christian Koss, for Luis Arias, and for Rafael Devers to be so good that they have to send Eldridge back to AAA anyway, because there is just not enough room on the Major League roster. So we will see. I am always skeptical. I think the Giants will do whatever they can to get this face the franchise type player up to the big leagues and let him work it out. But Buster Posey knows this. When you come up, you want to stay up. When Buster came up in 2010, yes, he had the cameo in September of 2009, but when he came up in June of 2010, he was there for good. I think the Giants view Bryce Eldridge the same way. When he comes up, whether that's opening day on March 25th or whether that's May 25th, you want Bryce Eldridge staying at the big league level. You can't mess with Bryce's development. 415-808 KNBR is the number. Speaking of Bryce Eldridge, Tony Vitello, the Giants manager, was asked about the top prospect in the organization on Murph and Marcus just last week. Cole, this is Cut G here. This is Tony Vitello talking about Eldridge and why he was out in the outfield in the early days of spring training, what the Giants were thinking about for a guy who spent so much time learning the mechanics of first base, figuring out exactly what it's like to play first base. Why all of a sudden was he shagging fly balls?
Yeah, I think at some point in his career, I could envision it. I mean, I don't, you know, there's so many eyes and ears now at Tennessee doing interviews that throw around just a lot of honesty and just vague ideas. So, but now at this level, you get fact checked. There's media everywhere. But my first instinct is like Bryce Harper. You know, that guy was a catcher in high school when I first saw him. I mean, he's a big left-handed bat, great teammate. You want him involved any way you can, and he's kind of moved around the park a little bit. And I don't know when Bryce's story is done with his career, if he ever plays an inning out there. But I do know he's a young kid. He's energetic. He's trying to figure out this game of baseball so that he's like a savvy vet, like Chappie. So time out there, I think, is only going to benefit him. But yeah, it was casual conversations between Bryce and I. It wasn't any big, you know, chalkboard meeting, or no one dictated he had to do it. Just something he was doing. And again, we haven't even started positional camp. So all this stuff these guys have been doing with Wash, like you mentioned, or out in the outfield is kind of stuff they've just taken the initiative to take responsibility and do it. And they're probably doing it because they think they can make him a little better player.
I think that was the keynote right at the end there. He spent about 60 seconds talking about Eldridge, talking about, you know, what could happen over the course of his major league career. But the keynote was when Eldridge was shagging balls in the outfield, it was before position players arrived for spring training. It was before the Giants were doing full squad workouts. It was just volunteer workouts for a lot of these players who showed up with the pitchers and the catchers. They got out there learning the new coaching staff, Ron Washington being a key part of all of this, former major league manager with both the Angels and the Rangers, a just incredible infield coach in his time with the Athletics and other organizations around Major League Baseball. This was Eldridge kind of doing it on his own initiative. And, you know, I spoke last week. I don't love this no matter what. I think that Eldridge needs to become a mediocre first baseman at best before he starts learning other positions. And from what I've heard so far, he's still got room to grow defensively. But I do think it's a good thing that Eldridge was among the many, many position players who showed up to camp ahead of schedule for the San Francisco Giants. I do think it's a good thing that a lot of veteran leaders in Matt Chapman, Willie Adames, Luis Arias were all there working out in Scottsdale when they didn't need to be. Yes, the season starts early, and yes, there will be some interruptions to camp due to the World Baseball Classic. And so you're going to have less time around your teammates than you normally would, especially for some of these stars who are headed off to the WBC. But I do think it's important. I do think that all of these guys getting down to Scottsdale and getting in rhythm with one another, that's beneficial for the San Francisco Giants. And Tony also talked about that last week. This was Friday with Murph and Marcus. Cut F here, Cole. Before the first full squad workout, which took place on Sunday, first full squad workout today, he talked about why he enjoyed getting to know the players early in camp.
Yeah, it's awesome because a player-led locker room is what you need to have success at any level, but in particular the pro level. And none of that has come from me. I mean, I've let these guys alone as adults, pro athletes. I wanted to get to know all of them, maybe meet with them face to face or go to their city. But there was no rah-rah or we need you here, or a lot of guys have just taken the initiative to be on a mission, and everybody's got a different mission going on. And let's just call it what it is with the Rise. He wants to play second base. And I can only imagine what's in the Twitter sphere about, or whatever the hell you want to call it, about, he can't do this or can't do that. So there's your motivation if you need it. And then a lot of other guys that just were not satisfied with how last year went. So they either showed up earlier or put together a new protocol in the winter. And it's only helped me because I'm wanting to get to know all these guys and I want to feel like we're prepared. So far, so good in that category.
So far, so good. And I think that is an important takeaway on a day where we've spent a lot of time discussing all of the issues that have gone on down at Giants camp, and all of the issues, I say, just the tangent that Tony Vitello went on this morning in his speech to reporters that everyone has written about, that everyone's discussed in detail, that everyone's talked about, including myself here on KNBR for the better part of the last hour. I think it's important to remember that, as he says, you got to have a player-led locker room and a player-led clubhouse. And while Tony created a bit of a distraction this morning, we'll see. You get a few of these as a manager. You don't get a whole lot, but you get a few, especially as a first-time manager. We'll see how he handles it tomorrow. In the meantime, the Giants do have a good core of veteran players that they can rely on. They do have a Chapman, a Devers, an Adames, a Bader, a Bailey, a Webb, guys who've been around Major League Baseball, guys who played on different teams, guys who understand what it takes to win at this level, and guys who can, just as much as you want a manager going into a clubhouse and kind of telling everyone how to act, what to do, what to expect, I think there are also many players on this Giants roster who can go to the manager's office and say, hey, Skip, we got to have a conversation. You got to look forward. You got to talk about us. You got to talk about the team. You got to talk about expectations. You got to leave Tennessee behind. So when we come back, we'll take a look at the San Francisco 49ers. 415-808-KNBR is the number. An interesting story out in The Athletic earlier today on the 49ers. Actually, this was on all 32 teams. It was different players who could be cap casualties for all 32 teams. So we'll talk about the players who Matt Barrows, The Athletic, selected for the 49ers, great 49ers beat reporter for The Athletic. And we'll also talk about some of the other players who could become cap casualties this offseason, who I think the 49ers ought to take a look at as they start to build their roster. Every decision that Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, Jed York make this offseason, it's going to be under the microscope because there are so many people who are sick and tired of watching other teams in the NFC West get to the top, celebrate titles, win, as the Seahawks and the Rams have done in the last several years, and sick and tired of seeing the 49ers fall short. Even though this was a rebuilding, a reset year where they went 12-5, where they maybe overachieved and won in Philadelphia, there's a lot of pressure from fans, from people inside the organization, just from the natural age of this core, of Fred Warner, of Christian McCaffrey, of George Kittle, of Nick Bosa, all these guys who've been around. There's a lot of pressure to deliver a Lombardi to San Francisco, Santa Clara, the broader Bay Area at whole, every member of the 49ers faithful fan base. So we'll talk about the 49ers in great detail on the other side. We're rolling with you until 9 o'clock here on Leader. We got a Warriors conversation coming up as well after NBA All-Star Weekend. The Dubs back in action on Thursday night this week out at Chase Center. They've also got, I believe, a Sunday game, and then they hit the road for New Orleans and Memphis. We'll preview the Dubs when we come back as well. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 680, the Sports Leader.
This is where we feed the faithful. Sports Phone, KNBR. Streaming live at twitch.tv/The Sports Leader.
We are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley hanging out with you until about 9 o'clock this evening. Sports Phone running all week here on The Sports Leader. On Wednesday evening, we had our Hot Stove League show, final edition of the Hot Stove League show of the offseason. The Giants begin Cactus League play on Saturday down in the desert. We'll talk more Giants baseball in the 8 o'clock hour. We'll also talk some Golden State Warriors basketball. But because Larry Krueger did not host Niners Nightly this evening with the holiday, he was on this afternoon with FP Santangelo. You'd be remiss if you did not get some 49ers talk here on the Leader, and so I want to make sure we take care of that this evening. There was some news earlier today as The Athletic put out one of its all 32 stories, one of my favorite types of stories that The Athletic does. You get a representative who covers each team together to answer the same question, and today's question is, which player or players on the respective team that you cover could be a cap casualty this offseason? And look, if you asked 49ers beat reporters beginning of last season, I think there would have been a wide variety of names who they all could have thrown out there, and pretty much all those players became cap casualties. Leonard Floyd, Malik Collins. At one point, Kyle Juszczyk looked like he was going to be a cap casualty as he was released and then ultimately re-signed a few days later. There were just a number of players who were let go as the 49ers opted to go out and get younger. Last year, they ended up with, I think, 11 draft picks at one point. It was a really, really intense effort from the front office to kind of reconstruct this roster. And I don't think many people inside the walls down in Santa Clara thought the 49ers would win 12 regular season games, would win a postseason game, but that's exactly what happened. The 49ers feel good about themselves after kind of a reset season and all that they were able to accomplish, and they hope that by getting Fred Warner, George Kittle, Nick Bosa, Christian McCaffrey on the field and healthy at once, and again, with Kittle's recovery, with McCaffrey coming off a season in which he led the NFL in touches, who knows if that will happen this year, but that will be the goal for the San Francisco 49ers. You also want to make sure that Ricky Pearsall, Trent Williams, Deommodore Lenoir, all the key pieces are healthy and ready to go. But nevertheless, this segment started with a question, and the Athletics' Matt Barrows was the person to answer with regard to the San Francisco 49ers. Barrows does a tremendous job not only covering the 49ers for the Athletic, but also on the 49ers Plus Minus podcast with our friend Tim Kawakami, and he said two players who could be cap casualties for the San Francisco 49ers this offseason: Bryce Huff, the edge rusher, and Demarcus Robinson, the wide receiver. And immediately, both of those make sense to me. I didn't realize this, but Bryce Huff is due $17 million for the 2026 season. He had 4 sacks this season. He was great against the Atlanta Falcons, but he had nothing after week 7. $17 million for a rotational pass rusher is way too much money. I think Bryce Huff can be a part of what the 49ers are trying to accomplish in 2026, but maybe $17 million over 2 seasons. Maybe you spread that out over 26 and 27, because at that rate, I don't see Jed York, Parag, Kyle, John, anyone comfortable with paying a rotational pass rusher $17 million in a position of need for the San Francisco 49ers. This is a team that needs to go out and evaluate trade opportunities for players like Max Crosby, if they become available. Needs to consider signing Trey Hendrickson as a free agent this offseason. This team cannot be paying Bryce Huff $17 million. And keep this in mind. Huff was acquired last year in a June deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. It was a pretty good deal for the San Francisco 49ers. They gave up limited draft capital. The Eagles kicked in some money, but he was acquired because he was a Robert Saleh guy. Undrafted free agent, signed on with the New York Jets during Saleh's tenure at the Meadowlands, and ended up carving out a really nice career for himself. I believe there was a double-digit sack season there. He ultimately got paid because of that. Got this contract that's going to pay him $17 million next year because of that season with the New York Jets. But Robert Saleh is no longer the 49ers defensive coordinator. In fact, he's the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Bryce Huff might be next in line to join the Tennessee Titans this offseason. Who's to say whether or not he's a fit for Raheem Morris's scheme? But I know that at $17 million, it would be a hard sell to keep Bryce Huff in Robert Saleh's scheme if he stayed in San Francisco at that price. And so this one's obvious to me. Even though the 49ers need to use some draft capital, use some free agent capital, maybe even trade for a pass rusher, You just can't have someone who's a rotational guy sacking fewer than 5 quarterbacks per season making $17 million. It doesn't add up for a team that's trying to spend more efficiently, trying to add players who fit the new scheme. To me, there are better paths forward for the San Francisco 49ers. So don't be surprised at all if Matt Barrows is correct on that one. Now, the other calculation I thought was pretty interesting, bringing up Demarcus Robinson's name. Robinson ended up with 276 receiving yards, 7th on the 49ers this year. And if you had watched him during training camp, as I did, I was down there in Santa Clara a couple of times, he looked like someone who should have 500, 600 yards. He looked like someone who would be comfortable within the confines of this offense, and maybe it was the fact that he never got on the same page with Brock Purdy early on in the season, because they looked to be on the same page during training camp. Maybe it was the fact that he started the year suspended for, I even forget what he was suspended for, but he missed the first 3 games. Brock Purdy obviously gets hurt early in the year, misses 8 games, and so maybe it was because he didn't have the same level of chemistry with Mac Jones that he did with Purdy, and so he ends up popping off in the Eagles game in the playoffs, beating Quinyon Mitchell twice on the opening drive, including that big, I think it was a 61-yard reception before he gets that easy touchdown throw in front of Mitchell as well. Really helped the 49ers on that opening drive against the Eagles, and that was important. But I don't know what Robinson's owed this year. It's probably not that much money. But you have to think the 49ers could do better than having Robinson as their 3rd or 4th wide receiver. To me, he put up the production of a player who's a true wideout 5, and the 49ers already kind of have that in Sky Moore, in Jordan Watkins, in someone that they'll inevitably draft in the 4th or the 5th round this year who won't get much playing time because Kyle often doesn't play rookie wide receivers unless they are immediate impact guys. So I think it would make sense to me if the 49ers parted with Robinson, but at the same time, if Pearsall is a question mark in terms of his health, if Jawan Jennings goes elsewhere in free agency, and the 49ers are trying to break in either a star-level trade acquisition at the wide receiver position, and I think they ought to pursue one, or a first-round draft pick, maybe you keep Robinson around for the stability that he can provide. Because I do think that the connection was better with Purdy than it was ever going to be with Mac Jones. And when you consider that Pearsall can be in and out of the lineup, and the other players at this position are largely going to be question marks unless they do bring Jawan Jennings back and they agree to a team-friendly deal, because I don't think Jawan Jennings is coming back on like a big player-friendly deal where he's owed $25 million per season over the next 3 years. I just don't see that for someone who clearly wants to get paid at a high level. But if the rest of the NFL shows it doesn't value Jennings in the free agent market, maybe his market lingers on and the 49ers figure out a way to bring him back, then you could envision Robinson being a cap casualty. But right now, I think that one's more of a 50-50 toss-up. Right now, I think Bryce Huff for sure. Like that is a great call by Barrows, and I can see why he included Demarcus Robinson in this mix for the San Francisco 49ers. But one of the beauties of The Athletic putting out this kind of a story of the 32 teams, 32 potential cap casualties, is you look around the rest of the league and see who could become available, like high up on the list. Atlanta Falcons, Kirk Cousins, that makes a ton of sense. Houston Texans, Joe Mixon, makes a ton of sense considering he dealt with an injury that kept him out all of last season. But you start to look around and you see players who might fit what the San Francisco 49ers are looking for. And, Tyreek Hill was a player who became a cap casualty on Monday. The Miami Dolphins releasing him early in the day along with Bradley Chubb wouldn't shock me at all if Kyle said, go get someone like a Tyreek Hill or someone like a Bradley Chubb. And Hill is 32 years old. He, is coming off of an injured season. He's not as fast as he once was. Who knows about how he might fit in an offense led by Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy. But the 49ers are pressed at the wide receiver position. So every player that comes available, there are going to be questions about whether or not he fits. There is one player on this list, though, who I think clearly would fit the San Francisco 49ers, and that is Pittsburgh Steelers tight end Jonnu Smith, who played behind Pat Freiermuth this year. Steelers had a very deep tight end room. Darnell Washington got a lot of time. Connor Hayward is also in that room. And the Steelers kind of built themselves up at the tight end position. There have been a lot of folks. I've listened to Larry Krueger on Niners Nightly for a couple of weeks now talk up the idea that the 49ers ought to go out and sign Kyle Pitts in free agency. And I like that idea because if George Kittle is going to take some time to come back from this Achilles, and I'm almost certain that he is. Look, the 49ers and Kittle are both giving off this optimistic vibe that because of the way he tore his Achilles, his rehab might not take as long. He could be back early in the season. I'm sorry. Achilles injuries are devastating, and I haven't seen a player in any major sport come back really quickly and that work out really well for a prospective team. I think Kittle can be a very important player for the 49ers toward the end of next season and into a postseason run. I think he can, come back, still be the Hall of Fame caliber level tight end that he's been for the San Francisco 49ers, but I am not putting much stock in the idea of an accelerated timeline for a player on the wrong side of 30 years old. And so if the 49ers need to go out and sign a tight end, and if they aren't comfortable with the market that Kyle Pitts may ultimately have, I mean, you tend to think of the teams with the largest cap space signing players like Pitts, then Jonnu Smith, to me, coming off of a down season, playing alongside and kind of behind Freiermuth over there, that makes a lot more sense. That makes a lot more sense. He's almost certainly going to be cheaper. He can fill in, but he does not expect to be the tight end one when Kittle comes back because he's comfortable, or at least he looked comfortable playing next to and alongside Freiermuth, and he is a true wide receiver threat in the passing game. Like, you are not just looking at someone who can block for you, but you're looking at someone who can catch a bunch of passes. So if Jonnu Smith is a cap casualty in Pittsburgh, and again, that's a big if, but they are undergoing a coaching change right now with the Steelers. It's no longer Mike Tomlin. They're going to be built differently. Then I think that could be the player that you target at the tight end position. Again, Kyle Pitts is kind of the dream for the San Francisco 49ers fans. A lot of people point to him and say, well, he could be the prototype for a Kyle Shanahan offense. You get him out in the passing game, and you've got a big athletic body who's comfortable in the red zone, although I think a lot of fantasy owners would tell you, hey, he's not that comfortable in the red zone. But when you watch him closely, I think you see the talent, the toolbox, and you see a team in the Atlanta Falcons that just failed to maximize all the potential that Kyle Pitts brought out of the University of Florida. And so if it's not him, then I like the idea of Jonnu Smith. But more than anything, I like the idea of the 49ers investing at the tight end position. And maybe it's through the draft. Maybe it's another low-level free agent. But this is a team that since George Kittle joined the roster in the 5th round of the 2017 NFL Draft, it just has not done a good enough job supplementing the tight end position. There's been, the Eric Sauberts of the world who've just kind of blended in there. There's never been that true tight end two who the 49ers could really trust on an annual basis. And that's why you got to monitor the rest of the league for cap casualties. You got to look around and see who becomes available, who can help you, and where your most pressing needs are. And I think on the offensive side of the ball, 49ers unfortunately have a lot. Like, this is a team, even though it went 12-5, and even though it beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the playoffs, this is a team that has a lot of work to do. And so if you're talking about, Bryce Huff potentially becoming a cap casualty, Demarcus Robinson potentially becoming a cap casualty, then you're talking about even more work for this front office this offseason. And it's already going to be an arduous undertaking to ensure the 49ers at least get back to 12-5, and if not, challenge atop the NFC West with the reigning Super Bowl champs in the Seattle Seahawks, and a team that probably pushed the Seahawks better than any opponent, including the New England Patriots, their Super Bowl foe, in the Los Angeles Rams. So the road back is not easy, but every move the 49ers will make this offseason is fascinating and tells us a bit more of the story entering 2026. So when we come back, we'll do a little NBA talk. Victor Wembanyama, Steph Curry, the All-Star game over the weekend, looking ahead for the Golden State Warriors second half of the season, and then we will wrap things up with some Giants baseball in the in the 8 o'clock hour, right here on KNBR 104.5, 680, the sports leader.
Giants baseball, nothing like it.
Here's a long drive to right. It's headed for the bay.
On KNBR and KNBR FM, San Francisco.
We are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley rolling with you until around 9 o'clock this evening. It's been a pleasure talking Giants baseball with you, opining about 49ers football, and of course, we have to fit in a little Golden State Warriors basketball. We're not going to go deep on Macklin, Celebrini, and the Olympics tonight, but the Sharks' 19-year-old wonderkind, he's had a heck of a time over in Milan. It's been fun to see the national and international reaction to Celebrini's talent. So we try to cover everything here on Sports Phone. I always have a fun time doing this with you, and I'll be back with you on Wednesday night, which is actually our final Hot Stove League show of the offseason. For those of you who tuned in on the evenings throughout the winter, we do our Giants Hot Stove show every Wednesday night. Giants players, coaches, executives, and it's been a ton of fun this winter getting to know some new members of Tony Vitello's coaching staff, how some of the veterans are reacting to the new Giants manager, and this Wednesday will be our final Hot Stove League show as the Giants open Cactus League play on Saturday down in the desert, and all eyes will be on what this team can accomplish moving forward. So we will wrap up tonight's show with a snippet from Giants Postcards. My friend Connor Grossman and I get together and do our Giants Postcards podcast on a near weekly basis, and especially during the spring months and the summer months, we get together with regularity talking about the San Francisco Giants, and so that's how we will wrap up this evening show. But before we do so, I've often hosted on KNBR in the months of February and March and spent a lot of time through the years talking spring training, and at the same time, I feel like I'm always in around President's Day weekend, in part because this is either a day that the entire station takes off or a day that a lot of hosts take off so that they can have a long weekend. And it's a time when there's just not a whole lot happening in the sports calendar. So naturally, you tend to focus on what is taking place, whether it be the NBA dunk contest, the NBA three-point contest, the NBA All-Star game. And this was All-Star weekend, and I knew going into it that Steph Curry was not going to be a part of it, that the Warriors are resting him. He's dealing with the knee issue right now. It was smart on everyone's front for Curry not to partake in the All-Star game, not to go down to Southern California and partake in the three-point competition. No matter how much he wants to do it, he's got to play his best basketball wearing a Golden State uniform. He's played enough of these All-Star games, and I think the entire world knows what he's capable of. He's played in the Olympics. We've seen Steph Curry on some grand stages. And at age 37, headed into his age 38 year come March, we just probably didn't need to see him push through it this year of all years, understanding that the Warriors are already without Jimmy Butler. Curry has a ton of mileage on those legs this season, running around the floor as he always does, and things are never going to get easier. We know that he is past the main portion of his prime. What he is doing is still remarkable for a player of his age, and he deserves all the accolades, all the honors, all the chatter around what's possible for a player as he approaches age 40. But nevertheless, it's never going to be the same as it once was. And so there's been this discussion through the years, probably for, I would say, the last 4, 5, 6 years around the NBA as Curry and LeBron have aged and the league has needed them to pass the torch to some younger faces. I think there was a belief that, someone like Anthony Edwards could be the next face of the NBA, or Jokic could be the face of the NBA in Denver for just the otherworldly talents that he possesses, for the incredible, abilities that he brings to the table with the Denver Nuggets, multi-time MVP, and Giannis, of course, with the Milwaukee Bucks. But I think this in-between generation, particularly the players around 30, just other side of 30 years old with Jokic and Giannis, has struggled to gain a foothold, in part because they are still close enough in age to LeBron and Steph Curry, and albeit separated by 8 or 9 years or so in a couple of those cases, but still close enough in age that they've still played a large chunk of their careers in the shadows of two players who have really transformed the way generations view the NBA and view basketball in general. I mean, no one is going to say, well, there's plenty of people that will say that LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan. But I think most longtime basketball observers will say that Michael Jordan's the greatest player of all time. But LeBron's career, now that he's on the other side of 40 years old, just has defied so many odds. It's remarkable considering that this guy was the number one pick for the Cleveland Cavaliers coming out of high school, and he's been a relevant figure for well over 20 years now, well over 2 decades. He's been at the top of the league, one of the best players in the league, has redefined what it means to consume the NBA because everything around the league is centered around LeBron, or it has been, and that has started to fade in recent years, but he's done all of that with Steph Curry also taking over the league. 2014-2015 season, the Warriors won the first of 4 titles. Curry, of course, pairing with Kevin Durant and forming this remarkable duo for the Golden State Warriors, and Curry redefining what's possible on the court with the depth and breadth of his three-point shooting. I mean, someone who has just taken three-pointers to a completely different level, and the league has adjusted based on the way that Steph Curry plays basketball. I mean, we, in large part, see teams chucking up three-pointers at record-setting rates on a nightly basis because of the way that Steph Curry influenced future generations of basketball. And so while Giannis and while Jokic have carved out remarkable careers in their own right, while they deserve to be celebrated for everything that they've accomplished on the floor, it's also hard for me to sit here and say that at any point of their respective careers, they've been the faces of the NBA, because I think most of us of a certain age, certain generation, at least those of us in the 30s and 40s, we grew up with LeBron and Steph, and we still see LeBron and Steph. So much of the way that we consume basketball is through the prism of what they've accomplished, what they've achieved, and what they are still doing on the floor. I mean, the Lakers are still incredibly relevant in the Western Conference. The Warriors are still a national storyline even after Jimmy Butler's injury. Everyone's fascinated to see, can they make one more run at it next season? Can, at age 38 next year, 26, 27, Steph Curry still be a factor in the NBA? And that's not to say that what Giannis and Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander have done isn't remarkable in its own right. It's to say that it just doesn't really matter as much. And maybe that's my local bias. Maybe that's my Bay Area-centric view. But I would say that this extends to LeBron James as well. These other stars who are, just under 30 or just over 30 have played at a point in time when everything that they've accomplished has also been pushed out of the spotlight by our need for more information, more insight, more intel into how Steph and LeBron are still doing it at their respective ages. And I think we are starting to finally see the tide turning. And some of that took place over All-Star Weekend. And I think we're starting to see the tide turning because of Victor Wembanyama, who came into the NBA a couple of years ago as this 7'4" phenom from France, who was going to redefine basketball in a way that was similar to how Steph Curry could redefine basketball. 2 completely different players. The archetypes look miles apart, but that these two could thrive in the NBA, that these two could be dominant in the same league, is a testament to just the remarkable athleticism it takes to play basketball, and how at the highest levels, there are so many different ways that the job can get done. And Wembanyama is different than a 7-footer in Giannis. He's different than a 7-footer in Jokic. I think his ability to dribble, to step back, to block shots, to shoot from beyond the arc, there are so many things that are jaw-dropping about the game of a Victor Wembanyama, about the intensity and purpose that he takes the floor with, kind of the edge, the chip that he plays with on his shoulder, that's just a little bit different from the way that Jokic plays. I mean, Jokic is almost famously detached from basketball. Giannis is playing in Milwaukee, and this is no disservice. I don't want to talk bad about Milwaukee. I think it's a great city. I love going there when I was covering Giants baseball with regularity on the beat for the San Jose Mercury News. Milwaukee and going to see the Giants and the Brewers, one of my favorite road trips, but it is just different when you are not one of the top 5 markets in the NBA. And yes, Giannis led the Bucks to a title, and yes, he's won multiple MVPs, and yes, he's a 7-footer who does things that defy gravity on some nights, but we've kind of seen it in other shapes and forms. Like we've seen a Kevin Durant come through the league and play. Look, it's not the exact same style of basketball. Giannis can get to the hoop a little easier. Durant more of a shooter. But we've seen players his size, his age doing these things in the past. Whereas Wembanyama is showing us things that we really haven't seen before in the NBA. And Steph Curry showed us things that we really didn't see before in the NBA. And Steph influenced a generation of shooters, has completely changed the way that teams look at the sport. And I don't think there's an ability to replicate a Victor Wembanyama. Like you can't say, hey kid, grow up to be 7'4", and oh, by the way, learn to shoot from beyond the arc and have this sixth sense about blocking shots that other players who man the center position just don't necessarily have. Like you can teach kids who are 6'5" to shoot from 33 feet. And yeah, no one's going to shoot the way that Steph Curry does, but you can at least try to replicate it. You can't try to replicate what Victor Wembanyama does. And so while Steph Curry is still the person who gets me to tune in to the NBA, and in many ways LeBron James throughout my life has been someone who has gotten me to tune in to the NBA because he was the great hope coming out of high school, and he delivered. He lived up to the hype with the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Miami Heat, and of course going back to Cleveland and now in LA with the Lakers. Like LeBron has delivered on the hype the same way that Bryce Harper, who graced the cover of Sports Illustrated as a teenager, delivered on the hype in Major League Baseball. Is Bryce Harper the best player of all time? Of course not. But he lived up to the MVP caliber player that he was supposed to be, and so did LeBron. And so there's been this fascination for me, and I think people of my age, early 30s, mid-30s, late 30s, who have seen these players who've grown up with them and who don't know the sport without them. Like, I don't know basketball without LeBron James. For years, I didn't know the NFL without Tom Brady. And there's entire generations of kids who don't know the NBA without Steph Curry. He's 37 years old. There are kids who are, 21, 22, 23, who just can't remember what this league looked like before Steph Curry took it over. And so, yeah, you're going to get lost in translation if you're Jokic or you're Giannis. And it doesn't mean that it's not special. It doesn't take away from their achievements, their accomplishments. It just means that they're close enough in age to Curry where that passing of the torch, where the next face of basketball, it didn't really have to happen. And now we're at the point within the next 12 to 24 months where it really is going to happen, where Steph and LeBron are going to fade out of the main spotlight, where they are fading out of the main spotlight in the NBA, and someone is going to have to become the face of the league. And from everything that I read about this weekend, everything that I watched this weekend, it's Victor Wembanyama. And it's almost unfortunate for a Giannis or a Jokic or even a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, whose style of play doesn't lend itself to being a face of the league, that they won't get that opportunity. But I think there needed to be so much separation. I think you needed someone young, like 15, 16 years younger than Steph Curry and LeBron James, or in, Wembanyama's case, almost 2 decades younger than LeBron James, to really become that next face of the NBA. And you needed someone with such absurd abilities and skills that they defy what we've seen as previously possible. It has to be so different from the prior generation. And yes, Jokic was incredibly different. Yes, Giannis did many different things, but still too close in age. And we've seen players like Shai, like SGA with OKC. We've seen players do what he does. And maybe he's doing it at a higher level than, say, a James Harden. Maybe he's doing things at a level that deserves to be commended in a greater way. It's just not aesthetically pleasing. It's just not fun to watch. Whereas Wembanyama, every time he takes the floor, I'm not in San Antonio. I don't watch the Spurs on a nightly basis, but you bet I want to see Wembanyama highlights the way that people in San Antonio for a decade wanted to see Steph Curry highlights. Because when we see things that haven't been done before, that's what makes us tune in. That's what makes us care. That's what turns the casual observer into the bandwagon fan and the diehard. That is how these things evolve. And so as Steph and LeBron age out, Wembanyama's aging in. I'm not ready to sit here and say from my, perch in the Bay Area that Wembanyama is the next face of the NBA, that it's got to be him or the league has got it all wrong, because I think that these things work themselves out naturally. But I think that this is working itself naturally. I think that we can see that Victor Wembanyama, what he's doing in San Antonio and how he's building up the Spurs and how he's doing things entirely differently, it's special. It's different. And again, you can't train a generation of kids to grow up to be 7'4" and have the skill set that Wembanyama does, the way that you could train a generation of kids to try and do what Steph Curry is doing. But I think that you're going to see a lot of people for years to come treat Wembanyama and the traveling act of the San Antonio Spurs the way that the Golden State Warriors were treated. And it wouldn't hurt for the NBA if Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs won a couple titles along the way. I'm Kerry Crowley. This is Sports Phone KNBR. We are rolling with you until 9 o'clock this evening. On the other side, Connor Grossman stops by. We've got our Giants Postcards podcast snippet for you to wrap up the show here this evening. You're listening to KNBR 104.5, 680, the sports leader.
We want your reaction, so give us a ring or blow up the text line at 415-808-KNBR. This is Sports Phone KNBR. Streaming live at twitch.tv/the Sports Leader.
We are back here on Sports Phone KNBR. Kerry Crowley rolling with you until 9 o'clock here on Leader, wrapping things up this evening. And as we often do here early in the week on Sports Phone, it's time to bring in our guest this evening, Connor Grossman, who joins us courtesy of the Giants Postcards newsletter that he writes. He does a great job on Substack. You can get the Giants Postcards newsletter sent directly to your email inbox. And you can also listen to the Giants Postcards podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can leave reviews. You can leave comments. We will read them. We will discuss them in detail. And Connor and I have begun talking about the Giants with more regularity, doing so on a just about every week basis, as we will do through the beginning of the regular season. And our off-season analysis seemed to strike a nerve with listeners both here on KNBR and listeners on podcast platforms who said, hey, we might be being too negative about the San Francisco Giants entering 2026. After all, they haven't played any games yet. It's too harsh to judge them before they step out onto the field, and we can see if Buster Posey's team is greater than the sum of its parts. And so with that being said, Connor, are we being too negative? Are we being too harsh? Are we, hurting the perception of the San Francisco Giants before opening day even arrives?
Do we over-index on the negative a little too much? Are we looking at things a little glass half empty? I'll listen to the argument. I think we're realists. We're laying it all out there. We're telling you the Giants, they have a good offense, but they also preach this identity of pitching and defense, and that's not what this team is. Their bullpen, totally unproven, and the rotation seems pretty shaky. We're going to see. But I'm going to take these comments from listeners to heart. And Carrie and I have just poured a nice big frosty jug of Kool-Aid, bright orange Kool-Aid, and we are going to pass it around for the next few minutes. It is all positivity here, and I'm going to pass it to Carrie first. Carrie, if you're handing out some Giants Kool-Aid and trying to sell people on all the good that's to come in 2026, what comes to mind first? What kind of Kool-Aid? What's floating around in your Kool-Aid? Who's floating around in your Kool-Aid?
I was going to say, if you're looking for reasons for optimism, the first place that I would turn if you're the Giants and trying to market this team is the lineup could be as good as it's been in a really long time. You've got Luis Ariz at the top making things happen, and then you've got 5, 6, 7 different guys capable, not saying it'll happen, but capable of hitting 20 home runs this season, and 2 to 3 players who could realistically clear 30 home runs. If you include Rafael Devers, Willy Adames, and you look at the best possible case scenario for Bryce Eldridge in his rookie season. Now, I don't think that's likely. I think the Giants would be fortunate to get 10 home runs out of Bryce Eldridge this year. But nevertheless, you think about what this team's lineup
fortunate to
been.
Get 10 home runs out of Bryce Eldridge does not sound very cool. Doesn't sound very Kool-Aid-y to me. That's all I'm saying. Sorry, I cut you off.
He's 21. I think, if you get some good swings out of him, you're pretty excited about what that holds for the future. But I think this lineup has the potential to be the very best it's been since the Giants were routinely competing for playoff spots. Now, probably won't be as good as the 2021 lineup that led the National League in home runs that year, but that was an aberration of a lineup, and no one projected it to be that good going into the season. This lineup projects to be much better, at least top half of the National League, if not top 3, 4 in the National League.
Totally agree. That was where I was also going to lead off with the Kool-Aid, is that just as a fan, I'm excited to watch a Giants offense that hopefully, by all accounts, should be above average. And above average sounds like a silly thing to be excited about as a fan. But as anyone who's watched a lot of Giants baseball over the years know, especially in the Oracle Park era, it's hard to hit the ball. And the Giants have always focused on pitching. And we know that this is a big park. The ball often does not go over the wall. So why try to fill the lineup with guys who are trying to do that? Well, this year's Giants are zagging away from that. Willy Adames hit 30 home runs last year, as we know, first Giant to do it since Bonds in 2004. Chapman's a power hitter. Devers, obviously a power hitter. Eldridge, if he hits more than 10 home runs, we can call him a power hitter. This lineup is gonna score some runs. There's going to be a lot more 7-5 games than there are going to be 2-1 games. It might not be pretty. There's probably still going to be a lot of strikeouts, but they should score enough runs to win. And I think that's really exciting. And specifically within the offense, something else that really gets me excited is a full season of Rafael Devers. As Buster said in the introductory press conference, Rafael Devers is a dude, and the Giants get to watch a dude hit for a whole season. And I feel like he was really bogged down last year by those lower body injuries. Like, it's kind of amazing, I feel like, that he even played as many games as he did. Like, you watch him labor around the bases, and I'm sure he's not a speedy guy anyway, but he really looked like he was hampered by whatever injuries were going on. And in theory, I would imagine he's fully healthy stepping into spring, and I want to see if he can make Oracle Park look small, if that's possible. I hope he can. I was thinking, if Devers plays a full season and everything goes as well as we think it will, he should exceed 100 RBIs. Have the Giants had a full season 100 RBI player since Posey in 2012?
I was going to say, wasn't it 108 RBIs for Posey in 2012? I
don't know the number, but
time.
I think we're going on now 14 years since a full season Giant crossed 100 RBIs.
That's pretty remarkable when you think about it.
That's insane.
And Devers should be that guy. Luis Arias will be on base a lot in front of Rafael Devers this year. He should drive him in 40 times alone. So, yeah, I think that is, I mean, we talked for years about the 30 home run threshold and how no Giants player crossed that. I think this season, the focus of everything we do has got to be the 100 RBI guy. I think we got to start going there with regularity, bringing up the fact the Giants haven't made a playoff series, haven't won a playoff series since 2014, and haven't had a 100 RBI guy since 2012.
The 100 RBI thing is just so damning. Sorry, I know we're in the middle of our Kool-Aid conversation. Our Kool-Aid's a little more sour than maybe we anticipated, but you could be the worst team in baseball history. Well, that's probably an exaggeration. That was the White Sox a couple years ago, and I'm pretty sure they didn't have a 100 RBI guy. Point being, you could have a 100-loss team that has maybe not even 100 RBI guy. You could probably have a 100-loss team that has 200 RBI guys, and it wouldn't matter, which maybe that says something about aiming for the RBI and how important that really is. But this is as robust of an offense as the Giants have stepped into a season with in a long time. The numbers will prove that out and how these guys stack up against the offenses on the championship teams. But just on paper, Kerry, I feel like I'd want this lineup over, heck, I mean, at least the 2010 lineup and the 2012 lineup, maybe 2014.
I mean, those lineups... Those lineups didn't inspire much. Like the 2010 and 2012 lineups, they were fine. But like 2010, the Giants got really excited when they got Pat Burrell, signed to a minor league deal, and then coming up after being DFA'd by the Rays at one point. Like, that was a team that needed a ton of help. Cody Ross, who they blocked a waiver claim on, ended up being one of the most important hitters in the postseason. Like, think about 2012. Marco Scudero, a little-known infielder, ends up hitting 364 down the stretch and becoming the most important, catalyst for that lineup. Those lineups were not that good. They really weren't. Right. It was Buster Posey led and driven in 10 and 12, and even in the postseason, Posey wasn't that great. Like, they had to win with very timely hitting from very unlikely suspects.
Right. Like, when they traded for Hunter Pence in 2012, I felt like the Giants had reacquired Barry Bonds in his prime. Like, I was so starved for offense as a fan that I was like, oh my God, the Giants signed or traded for an offense-first player. I don't care where he plays, what he does. And obviously we know how instrumental Hunter Pence was into winning a couple of championships. I think the best thing you could say about this offense on paper is that if Buster Posey, late prime Buster Posey was playing right now, you could slot him in the 2-hole or the 5-hole or the 6-hole, and you wouldn't need to hit him 3rd or 4th, which is where he spent the bulk of his career with the Giants. Just totally miscast.
I think that's the best perspective to have on this. Like, think about all the teams that Buster was on where he was hitting 3rd or 4th. And I mean, I go back to 2017 when the Giants had absolutely nothing. They lost 98 games that year, but Buster hit like 259, and he was playing through a terrible hip injury that season. And he just didn't have it. And yet they had to continue trotting him out there. And you go to 2018, same deal. Like even with Evan Longoria and Andrew McCutcheon in the fold, you still had to have Buster in the middle of the lineup there. And look, he's probably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. No shame on having a first ballot Hall of Famer in the middle of your lineup. But this year's team, 2021 Buster Posey probably hits, like you said, second or fifth. And that tells you everything you need to know about the depth of this lineup compared to recent years.
Yeah, now we're pouring Kool-Aid. Now the Kool-Aid is free flowing.
Now you've
we're
got me
feeling
fired
good.
up.
Yeah. All right, here's another splash of Kool-Aid that has me excited going into the season is that the Giants are going to be in the headlines. Spring training opens up in Scottsdale. Pitchers and catchers report, and Ken Rosenthal's there, and I think Bob Nightingale was there, and maybe some other national writers. Like, people are interested in what the Giants are doing. Most of it has to do with Tony Vitello being the first major league manager to, assume that role with no professional experience otherwise. But this extended era of 500-ish baseball has made the Giants almost invisible. Because let's face it, if you're in the media and you're responsible for talking about all 30 teams, you want to talk about who's really good or who's really bad. And then there's 5 to 10 teams that are just stuck in the middle that aren't really interesting. And frankly, that's what the Giants have been for a prolonged period of time. Sorry, I know it's the Kool-Aid segment. But no longer. The Giants are interesting. They are a fascinating experiment run by a future Hall of Famer who is also a franchise icon. People want to see what's going on. And as a fan, I find that exciting. I don't want it to flame out spectacularly. I want it to work out spectacularly. But no matter what happens, people outside of San Francisco are interested in what's happening to the Giants. And I find that kind of exciting.
I also think that if the first 2 to 3 weeks of the Tony Vitello era go really well for the Giants, there's going to be a lot of positive momentum building in San Francisco throughout the course of the season. Like, the Giants could win 85, 86 games this year, but if they come out of the gates and go 14-4, or, they come out and go 13-7 through a really difficult schedule at the beginning of the year, there are going to be a lot of media members coming in, parachuting into San Francisco, coming to Oracle Park and writing about how Tony Vitello has brought a completely different competitive edge to San Francisco, whether that's true or not. Like, remember, last year, Bob Melvin's team got out of the gate really hot. They were great in April and May. But because there's this national fascination with the experiment that the Giants are running and how they don't really care what you think. They don't care that Tony Vitello has never managed a professional baseball game. They don't care that most people wouldn't add Luis Arias on their major league roster, let alone play him at second base because of the defensive liability questions that he faces. They're just, they're going, marching to the beat of their own drum and saying, if it works, we will take it. We will take it. And so that's why the first impression this team makes is going to be really, really interesting, because this schedule is daunting in late March, early April. And if they can get through it and make things interesting, a lot of good press, a lot of good vibes coming their way. And Buster Posey, Chief Vibes Officer, he'll be thrilled that he made that possible.
Totally. I was just going to say, I don't remember a lot of national media hyping up Bob Melvin after the Giants' hot start at the beginning. It wasn't like Bob Melvin's, infusing his spirit into these gritty 2025 Giants. No shot. But heck, even if the Giants win an exciting opening night game against the Yankees on Netflix, like, that's going to be a little mini era of buzz in itself. Gosh, I still think back to when the Giants opened up in Yankee Stadium a couple years ago. I think it was 3 years ago now, and I was there freezing my butt off, 35 degrees. Aaron Judge, Arson Judge, had just re-signed. He's facing Logan Webb in the first inning. And I'm like, all right, we're going to make this guy pay and regret for not signing with us. Immediately takes Judge, or immediately goes yard. Aaron Judge does. And that was a huge gut punch.
And Blake Sable didn't answer?
Blake Sable did not answer. But you know who we have to answer this year? Harrison Bader, Luis Ariz, Rafi Devers, Matt Chapman. The Giants might go back to back to back to back in the first inning of the 2026 season. How's that for some Kool-Aid?
Does Garrett Cole get the opening day start?
Maybe. Is he healthy?
I don't know. Probably Max Fried. You probably have Max Fried.
That's a good point. It's probably Max Fried. Max Fried, Logan Webb, Yankees in Oracle Park. Oh, I'm already stoked. I'm already a little annoyed about the thought of how many Yankee fans are probably going to be in the ballpark that night. I might even be going to the game with a Yankee fan. But wow. I know. Drew, if you're listening, I'd do anything for you. But it's a bad look. It's a bad look for the pod. So we'll see. We'll see. Anything else rattling around your mind? Reasons for optimism, hope, positivity? Anything else in your glass of Kool-Aid?
I mean, if you're looking at the top 2 in the rotation, really the top 3 in the rotation, Tyler Mahle coming off the best season of his career when he just made 16 starts, but they were 16 really quality starts. Robbie Ray threw, I think, upward of 180, maybe even 190 innings last year. I mean, he pitched deeper into the season than I think a lot of people in their second year coming off Tommy John surgery typically do. And if he regains the form that he showed prior to the surgery, and Logan Webb continues down the path that he's been on the last 4 years, and Mahle builds off of the season that he had, the rotation could be pretty good. Is it a top 5 rotation? Probably not. But it could be a top 10 rotation, assuming Landon Roop is healthy. I don't trust Hauser in the 5th spot, but that doesn't mean that, like, you're not going to get a Wisenhunt or a McDonald or a Blade Tidwell jumping into that spot and proving everyone wrong and saying, this is my job every 5th day, kind of like Landon Roop did a season ago. So there's a path for this rotation to be good. And I think that it's not like you have to squint. Like, you have to squint with the bullpen. You don't have to squint with the rotation to see it being pretty good.
A couple things. How many teams have ever really trusted the number 5 starter? I mean, that is a real rich person's problem to have.
2010 Giants. 2010 Giants trusted their 5th starter.
Johnny Sanchez?
I think Todd Wellemeyer started the season in that role, and then it was Bumgarner, it was Jonathan Sanchez toward the back.
All right, the other thing is, we're several days into pitchers and catchers being in Scottsdale. Have we heard anything about Tyler Mahle? I haven't seen anything.
No.
Is he there?
He's there. He's throwing, but
Okay.
I've not heard word one about Tyler Mahle.
Okay. Or even from Hauser. Both new guys, completely off the radar. I can only assume they are there and opening eyes.
Which is good. I think the less you hear about individual pitchers during pitchers and catchers, it's probably for the best, because until games begin, and games don't begin until Friday or Saturday for the San Francisco Giants, the only news you get is this guy couldn't complete his bullpen, back tightness. This guy had an elbow flare up. He's going to be out for a few weeks. Oh, we're going to have to slow this down. He's not going to pick up a ball for a while. Like, that is the only news you get. You don't get to spring training and get like the news that Hayden Birdsong's touching 100. Like, that doesn't happen until late March. So I think it is for the best that no one knows anything about Tyler Mahle and Adrian Hauser yet.
Fair enough. And I want to get into more spring training storylines, but to bring our Kool-Aid segment to an end, I do want to offer a quick little sip, a little shot of haterade. You know, we don't need to delve too far into the negativity, but just a quick shooter of haterade. I got to get this off my chest. It kind of a different sort of look at the bullpen, which we've established is not proven. It's a huge question mark. The Giants are panning for gold in the spring and hoping they come out with 7 or 8 viable arms. My beef right now, when I think about the bullpen, is that one of the loudest and most common criticisms of any manager is bullpen management. Tony V can only play the hand he was dealt, which appears to not be a very strong one. And so my message is almost like, it's like a preparation to fans. Save your yelling, save your anger when, I can't even think of a name, Margus Sevish blows it in the 7th and your 3-run lead is now a 2-run deficit. Tony V, I think, is going to catch a lot of strays for his bullpen management, and I'm sure some of it will be warranted, but we have to remember that this is certainly not the team's strong suit heading into the season. And again, I think Bob Melvin took a lot of flack for his bullpen management. Some of it deserved. Like, there's only so much a manager can do. There's only so much any coach in any sport can do. But specific to baseball, the relationship between managers and the way they handle the bullpen, it is a special and hotly contested relationship. And I think it will be especially tested as Tony V is under the microscope for everything he does. And near the top of that list, if not at the top of that list, is going to be bullpen management. And honestly, I think it's going to be tough. I really do.
I mean, there's two ways to look at it. I fully agree with you that this is going to be really tough situation for Tony Vitello to navigate. Like, there is in just very little ways that I see this working out according to plan for the San Francisco Giants, in part because I don't really know what that plan looks like for the San Francisco Giants right now. But the flip side of looking at
Can
this
I jump in before you get to the flip side? I have a quote written down that Tony V said the other day. On the pitching side, he says, if you're hungry for a job or hungry for innings or want to improve your role, it's got to be as good of a group in Major League Baseball as there is. I hear that and I think we have roster spots to fill up. And if you are in the greater Scottsdale area and have an arm and you like to throw stuff, we'd love to have you out for a tryout. That is literally how I read it. It is an acknowledgement that it's open season. And if you like baseball, we'd like to meet you.
There has never been an easier time in Major League Baseball to go from non-roster invitee to pitching the 8th inning on opening day as there has been in Scottsdale, Arizona with these San Francisco Giants.
If you're interested in a minimum salary of $750,000, we'd like to meet you.
If Gregory Santos gets through spring training healthy and posts an ERA under 2, not only is he on the opening day roster, there is a chance he picks up save number 1 on opening day.
Oh, I kind of like that wager. We should come up with some preseason wagers. I want to know who gets the first save of the season.
First save of the season will almost certainly be Ryan Walker. It's when does that first save happen? Does it happen during the Yankees series? Does it happen during the Padres series the following week?
That's fair. Opening night, probably a 9-2 victory. Opening day might be a little closer with the weird shadows.
7-3.
Right. Yeah, we'll call it 7-3. So yeah, it'll be a matter of when the first save situation comes. I cut you off. You were going to give a flip side argument to the bullpen, if you can recall.
Well, the flip side argument is obviously no one knows any of the pitchers who are down there for the Giants. No one knows roles they should be in. No one knows who's going to be pitching in the high leverage situations. And so if Tony can find 3 or 4 guys that he trusts in Scottsdale, and maybe it's Sam Hentges, Carson Seymour, and Blade Tidwell, and they slot in as like trusted 7th, 8th inning guys, he's going to look like a genius. So if the Giants came into camp with 15 guys competing for 8 jobs, and it might even be 16, 17 guys competing for 8 jobs down in the bullpen, and there are 3 players who are ready to outperform projections, and Tony has no reason not to throw them in the 7th and 8th inning. Like in other seasons, they would have to work their way into that role. Randy Rodriguez wasn't pitching in the 7th and 8th until June of last year, and he still made the All-Star team. So if Yoel Peguero is down in spring training throwing 100 missing bats, and he gets the call on the 8th on opening day and preserves a lead against the Yankees, everyone will be praising Tony Vitello. People are going to forget the fact that Yoel Peguero was no one, and they're going to say, yeah, why wasn't he pitching in the 8th inning for the last 10 years? Why was he stuck in the minors? So Tony has the potential to make this look very good, but the odds are like 80% that it looks really bad.
I can see the headlines now. Giants step into April with lowest ERA in baseball.
Into April after there were 3 games against the Yankees. Remember, this is the Yankees team that made headlines opening weekend last year for its use of the
the bats.
The bats. The different
what
type
were
of
they?
bat.
The torpedo bats? The
torpedo bats.
Is that what they were?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, so much good that did. I don't think the game got flipped upside down, but it was a fun couple days, which again is why the magnifying glass is going to be over Tony V, and it will especially be on him. That opening night game against the Yankees, 9-1 win, put it in the books. Speaking of Tony V, couple other quick hits on spring training I want to do. Spring training, obviously known for its very lax, laid-back environment. I'm sure by Bruce Bochy's 12th, 15th, whatever spring training, he pretty much was on autopilot during the games, at least. The practices are another thing. But for a guy, I'm curious your opinion on this, Kerry, as someone who's been around major league clubhouses and spent enough time at spring training. You think Tony V will be capital M managing some of these spring training games just to kind of get into the flow of the professional game? And I know spring training is not a one-to-one reflection of the regular season, but I want your informed opinion, and I'll give you my fans' opinion, which is that This guy's going to need some reps. Start getting them now. Take it a little more seriously. Not that he needs my encouragement to do that, but I think I would like to think he's going to take these lackadaisical Tuesday afternoon games in Peoria, kind of seriously. What do you think?
So there's a challenge here because every spring training game is scripted out to the point that you or I could go down and manage in Cactus League play, and our moves would look no different than what Tony Vitello does. Like, the team goes into the game with an absolute plan, and it is not deviating from that plan. So much so that, like, if the guy who was scheduled to pitch the 9th inning all of a sudden gets up in the bullpen and his elbow is sore, they don't play the 9th inning. Like they're just out of pitchers for the day. So I think that the Giants won't deviate from that. Like, obviously Tony will be kept to the plan that the front office creates for him, that he and Jace Tingler and the rest of the coaching staff come up with for these players. But there's a world in which he stays really intense for the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th innings. Whereas Bruce Bochy, he never did leave the dugout, but he could have left the dugout if he wanted to. Back in like 2017, if he says, I've had enough of today, I don't need to watch, Jarrett Parker take 2 more at bats to get ready for the season, Bochy could have packed it up, gone home, and no one would have batted an eye. Whereas if it's 8-5 in Maryvale and the Giants are losing against no-name reliever in the 8th inning, and up steps Bo Davidson and he hits a double to the gap, wouldn't shock me at all if Tony's on the top step of the dugout clapping it up for his guys and getting the guys in the dugout still, the prospects in the Giant system who are playing out the string of these games, intense and competing to the point where some of these guys probably put up better numbers this spring if they're super engaged in those situations. So wouldn't shock me at all if the Giants are just really engaged in the late innings of these spring training games, because Tony has to be that way as he learns the major league level.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I really think we should talk to our partnerships people in the Giants postcards business office about setting up something where you and I can manage a spring training game. And maybe live pod during the game.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Swear up a storm when another runner on third with less than 2 outs doesn't cross home plate. It's never too early to start getting angry about that. February is not too soon to get bothered about not scoring a runner from third with less than 2 outs. Another thing I saw, another headline in the Giants universe, is that Bryce Eldridge, something or nothing, maybe that's the way to frame this, something or nothing, Bryce Eldridge being asked to shag fly balls in the outfield, quote unquote, just in case. Something or nothing.
Something, right? Anything Bryce Eldridge does is something. I'm good with this for 99% of guys. Like, you tell Patrick Bailey to go put on an outfielder glove and go shag in left field.
Yeah.
Something,
He'd be really good at trapping balls.
He would be. He would be. The old Angel Pagan, Denard Span getting to the ball in center field for the San
Belly
Francisco
flop
Giants.
on the grass and just snares a wicked short hop to keep a single.
But my whole thing with Eldridge is, don't you want him spending every last minute at the diamond learning first base? Like, don't you want him getting, if he's going to take an extra 20 minutes to stay at Scottsdale Stadium on a Tuesday afternoon, don't you want those 20 minutes coming with Ron Washington teaching him how to play first base? Why do you want him tracking the ball in left field? Remember, how quick we are to forget that Gerard Encarnacion was injured leading up to opening day last year because he was playing right field in a game where he absolutely didn't need to be playing right field for the Giants and got hurt. And Eldridge isn't out there in a game. He's just running around shagging. But, like, if he's a mediocre at best first baseman, maybe we spend some time figuring out how to make him a mediocre first baseman.
Well, our podcast listeners cannot see the tinfoil cap that I just put on, but let me suggest that they are doing it to continue the streak of new left fielders on opening day, so that Bryce Eldridge is equipped to play left field for one game and one game only, late March against the Yankees, so that the streak can continue. What do you think?
Anytime this streak continues, I'm a happy guy. No analysis other than if this streak continues.
I just want to posit that theory. I want it out in the public forum for new and great ideas. The Giants are preparing to have Eldridge out there, even for just 1 out, to keep the streak going. Otherwise, I think it's a waste of time. I've really enjoyed, actually. I saw the Giants added Ron Washington to their staff. I knew that was a thing. I know he's a legend for his work with infielders and the drills he runs them through. And honestly, been really enjoying seeing all the content. The Ron Washington, the wash content. Not I wash, but just good old wash content. Working with Devers at first, Eldridge at first, even Chapman at third, as if he needs to get better defensively, Adames at short. For all the harping I have done personally on the Giants' defense not being good enough, I'm encouraged knowing they've got someone who's at least considered a defensive guru working with the guys. Maybe it'll be something, maybe it'll be nothing, but I think they're wasting Bryce Eldridge's time by even having a single brain cell occupy his mind about how to play the outfield.
All right, we will cut things off right there, but if you want to listen to the entire Giants Postcards podcast with myself and my co-host Connor Grossman, you can do so wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get them. Connor, always kind enough to allow us to play some snippets of that right here on Sports Phone, and I always feel like the conversation is well-suited for Giants fans who are listening, driving home in the evenings here on Monday, February 16th. You get a good idea of what's going on down at spring training, our take on what's happening in the desert. Connor, of course, the fan's perspective, mine, more of the journalist, the guy who used to cover the team as a beat reporter, and you get a sense of how the two of us kind of blend these perspectives together and share our thoughts on the San Francisco Giants. So with that, I do want to thank everyone who tuned in to tonight's show, a little longer edition of Sports Phone KNBR. This evening we got an earlier start, but nevertheless, always fun to do that and always fun to hear from you, the listeners, here on The Sports Leader. I want to thank everyone who contributed to tonight's show. Big crew in the studio this week. A lot going on, a lot happening behind the scenes, and really a lot of fun that has been had at KNBR over the last few weeks. I know that this is a time in the sports calendar when things oftentimes go by the wayside, when you've got the Olympics happening, when you've got the Warriors All-Star break. Things can get dull, things can get boring, especially if the 49ers didn't win the Super Bowl, but nevertheless, we had a lot of fun, and a lot of it was due to Cole Lapelt, who did a great job running the board for us this evening and making sure that everything went smoothly and according to plan. So thanks so much to Cole. Appreciate his thoughts and perspective behind the scenes and keeping us running, and appreciate all of you for listening in and making tonight's show so much fun. I'm Kerry Crowley signing off. I will be back with you on Wednesday evening this week when we've got our final Giants Hot Stove League show of the off season. I believe we might be getting Harrison Bader on there. We might be getting hitting coach Hunter Mency on there as well. The Giants will confirm guests tomorrow, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but if you tune in tomorrow night, you can get some more Giants analysis from the desert. FP Santangelo hosting tomorrow evening right here on The Sports Leader. I'm Kerry Crowley signing off. You're listening to KNBR, The Sports Leader.